Hello and welcome to another episode of the Uncommon Energy Podcast. On this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the Sao Paulo Regional Championships that took place this past weekend down in Brazil. We'll break down the results, talk about yet another Charizard winning list, and everything else that happened at that event. We will also talk about the mess that is the NAIC, the North American International Championships registration process. Seems like it's a little confusing to a lot of people. Arcanine literally had to put out a graph on Twitter this week. We'll talk about that and uh, give our
Fun
thoughts
start.
on it, and also make sure everyone else knows kind of the details of what's going on there. If you're trying to register for NAIC, we got a few new cards to look at. Just a couple we'll take a look at. Some pretty decent ones, though. Definitely seem interesting. We will, of course, have Guess That Flavor Text, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. And we're also going to be bringing back another segment, City League Watch. We're going to take a look at some of the decks that have been doing well in city leagues over in Japan because they do have half of the cards that will be in our Twilight Masquerade set coming out in just a few weeks now at this point. So we can get a little bit of an early look. They don't have everything. They don't have Dragapult. They don't have all the A specs, but yeah, we'll talk about those things. And then close things out this week by talking about a penalty discussion that was had on Twitter this week. Give our thoughts and opinions on it, what we think should be done in the situation that was presented, and yeah, all that and more on this week's episode of Uncommon Energy. And of course, we'll hop over after everything's said and done to our Patreon to do our weekly bonus episode. My name is Chip, joined here as always by my friend and co-host Azul GG. We got a lot of topics this week, Azul. Nothing like extremely long, but we've got a lot of things to talk about. How you doing, buddy? How's your week been?
I'm doing good. First, I gotta ask: have you shortened the name further? Went from Trainer Chip to Chip Richie. This week, it's just Chip. Are we staying with that? Is that going to be what it's moving
I am
forward?
Chip
Is there
Ritchie,
an
joined as
official
always by my
announcement?
co-host Azul GG.
I
Does
just
that
wanted to
feel
make sure.
better?
I want to make
Mm.
sure. I want to get ahead of the first. I knew someone might comment it, so I want to get the jab in there. Yeah, my week was it was good. Getting back to streaming and everything. I had a really annoying household problem. There was basically a bad stink in the dishwasher, and it took me
Oh,
a little while to get rid of it. Went through a couple different, um, I guess, methods to do it. Had to run it a couple different times with a couple different things.
cleaning products.
Yeah, bought a thing at the store, and then I also did the vinegar and baking soda method, which seems to be like a pretty common thing that people do with dishwashers. I've never heard of that before, but might start doing that monthly just to keep things
Yeah,
fresh.
it's not a bad idea.
Um, yeah, I got the stink. That was like really annoying though. I'm like someone who like I just like things to work and like everything that I do, I try and like make a put it on a schedule and everything. Like I do like all my chores and stuff on chores and like errands on Monday. You know, move the dishes along a couple times throughout the week, but like grocery shopping and then like laundry. And I have like a process for everything to make everything as efficient as possible. When something doesn't work and it throws
Mm.
everything out of whack, it's like super annoying for me. And I'm like, all right, I got to get this thing fixed so I can get the flow, get everything back in flow. So that was like my big hiccup this week. Got back into doing a little bit of streaming as well. Finally, because it's been a while. Started uploading to YouTube again. I didn't end up streaming today though, because PTCG Live was down,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I don't think it was emergency maintenance, but PTCG Live was also having some big problems last night, I believe, as well.
Yeah, they normally
Um,
do maintenance on Tuesdays, like,
yeah,
when they
yeah.
have stuff going on, but
Well, sometimes it's Wednesdays, I feel like, or have they switched it to
I
Tuesdays
think it
consistently?
is normally Tuesdays.
Okay, okay.
I could be wrong. You definitely play TCG Live more than I do.
It's definitely been both. If it's Tuesdays now, it used to be Wednesdays, or maybe they flipped it
I'm
again.
pretty sure it's
Maybe they did
Tuesdays
it.
now.
Maybe they did it on Tuesday this time around because of the problems that were happening yesterday. So you're like, all right, instead of Wednesday this week, but it might just be Tuesdays now. You might be right. Yeah, I didn't stream today. I was going to, and I was like, all right, I was like, literally had everything set up, my title
Ready
for
to
my
click
stream
start
in OBS.
streaming.
I was like about to click start, and I was like, sometimes I open PDCG Live before I click start. Sometimes I don't. This time I did, and I was like, oh yeah, there's maintenance. I was like, well,
What would you
sometimes
have
it
done if you
ends.
had clicked start streaming and TCG Live was down?
I don't know. I was at the beginning of my stream. I was gonna start the stream, but there was this really interesting board state in. I don't know if it was the winning in of. Oh, it was the top 8 match, I think,
It's Sao
at
Paulo.
the Sao Paulo regionals, which I did watch party over the weekend, which was a ton of fun. The watch parties are always a ton of fun. So we watched that. Pedro Petrucci getting another dub. with Charizard, I guess, getting another double. We'll talk about all that in a little bit. But that's super fun to watch party as always. I think I had like over 1,000 people watching. Maybe I didn't quite get over 1,000 on Twitch, but those streams do really well on YouTube. Actually,
They do,
I had
yeah.
like 1,300 people at some point on YouTube watching, which was really really sick for sure. Man, where was it going? Oh yeah, I was gonna start the stream by doing like just because I don't know the correct play still, so I want to just kind of sit there and think about it and talk through it. It was an interesting board state of Lugia versus Charizard, where the Lugia player had turn two double turbo, so didn't have to put Archeops or
Mhm.
anything in play and could have just sat there with one Lugia V Star for their first prize card. Then you run into a situation where it's like there's a possible return of a Defiance Band Radzard, but,
Yep.
like, the route they went down left them so vulnerable to just kind of a more standard Charizard line. So it's just, like, a really interesting board state that I kinda wanted to, like, analyze. That's what I was gonna start my stream with, and probably would've only talked about that for, like 20, 30 minutes, and then after that would've gone to PTCG Live. But PTCG Live was down when I opened it, and I was like, I'll hold out," so, like, every 30 minutes or so, I just kept checking while I was working on other stuff. We're working on some videos and stuff like that. But it didn't come back at like 2 p.m. When it didn't come back, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna call it for today. No stream today, and I'll just work on video stuff the rest of the day until we are now recording the podcast. So that was my day. That was my week. What about you, Chip? What have you been up to?
Not too much, yeah, just kind of a normal plain week, which is kinda nice, a chill week at home, hanging out with the family, and, my wife's been done with her, like, busy time at work this last week, which is nice, so she's an accountant, and so at work, they just got done with tax season and stuff like that, and so things have calmed down a little bit, so we've been enjoying some time, like, going out to family dinner and stuff like that, which we haven't done for the last couple months, or, like, in the afternoon, going out for, like, a quick, family walk around the shopping center or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's been nice, and, yeah, just kind of a chill week. We've got, Indy coming up in 2 weeks now, so looking forward to that. Um, but yeah, we've got a couple announcements. I guess just one announcement before we get into the bulk of our episode here, and that is your next show match, Azul, coming up this weekend. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So we got a show match coming up. I wanted to get some of the Latin American players involved because I haven't really had them too involved in any of the show matches so far. And I was like, there's no better way to get them involved than to literally get. I think like there's not even really a debate. The best group of players in Latin America right now from Brazil, and I did kind of. You can see here it's USA versus Latin America. It should be USA versus Brazil.
Mm.
Just kind of a hiccup on my part with the planning and going through everything. So it's US versus Brazil in the end. But my goal was to be like, all right, I want to get because I hadn't gotten any Latin American players involved so far into the show matches. So I was like, let's get some Latin American players. It ends up being a group from Brazil. We got William Azevedo, Pedro Petrucci, which are probably the two most accomplished players from Latin America from Brazil right now. Gustavo's not far behind, I don't think. And Ricardo, which is probably a name that people are less familiar with, but back to back top fours in the last two Latin American regional championships. Got top four over in Goiânia, and then just got top four here in Sao Paulo as well. So they're going up against some of the the better players in America. Caleb Guttermer, Grant Manley haven't had great seasons so far. Caleb had a pretty good end to last season, um, and Grant has had what one top four this season, and then they're joined by Ryan Antonucci, who we've been working with recently. Of course, you probably recognize Caleb and Grant as the two players that I work with routinely at major tournaments. We've been working with Ryan as well recently. So Ryan's joined them in the 3v3 best of nine conquest format showdown. And of course, Ryan did recently just win the Knoxville Regional Championship. So yeah, excited for this one coming up this Saturday, April 27th, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern for my next show match coming up. Going to be taking a break from these going into May, but I'm gonna try and come back pretty strong June and July. I might do like three of them over those 2 months, or 3 to 4 of them between July and August before Worlds, because I'll have a little bit of downtime from like major tournaments and everything. And I got some pretty big ones lined up for that as well. But yeah, I'm excited for this one coming up here.
Yeah, definitely seems like it's going to be a good one to watch. All these players are people who are either in or right outside of the like tier one invite for
Yeah.
their rating zones, right? Which is pretty cool. So these are, definitely some of the top competitors this season. across the board. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch. You definitely need to make sure you're hitting the USA comms a lot because I really want to hear Grant like laying into Caleb or Ryan, like because he definitely thinks whatever he's thinking is the right play, and then maybe they realize that it's not the right play, and then I just want that's the moment I'm hoping to see happen this weekend is Grant laying into someone for being wrong, realizing he's wrong, and having to take a seat. You know,
Yeah, there's definitely some comedic comms on that side. Probably won't get any comms from the, Brazil side because 'cause I'm assuming they're gonna
they
be
will be
talking
speaking in
in.
Portuguese most
Yeah,
likely.
yeah, yeah. So if we're gonna get any comms this weekend, it will be from the American side. But yeah, definitely will probably be some
I didn't
comedic
even think about that. That's
comms
kind
for
of
sure.
a bummer to not be
Yeah,
able to
that's
hear
like
both sides of it.
I guess that's the only drawback there, but it won't be that big of a deal, I don't think. But the
If I
comms
don't
are
know,
like a big part of I think the team show matches or whatever. Hearing
definitely
them
for sure.
discuss plays and then also hearing them, you discuss like deck choice as far as what are they going to send next.
Yeah, yeah. That is also one of the more interesting things about like the conquest format is determining what decks each player or each team wants to bring, right? Because it's like for example, like they might bring a deck to this that they would never bring to a major tournament because it loses to Charizard. But it's okay to bring a deck that loses to Charizard to this because your opponent only gets one Charizard deck, right? So once
Yeah.
they win with their Charizard deck, they don't get to use it anymore. And then now you have a chance to play a deck that you would never bring to a major tournament. So I definitely think that's cool.
Yeah, and yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, the conquest format is basically we're setting it at best of 9, which means you have to win 5 games on one side or the other. So each team will be bringing 5 different archetypes, and they have to win with each archetype. After you win with an archetype, you can no longer bring it to the next game in the match. And if you lose with an archetype, you could bring it to the next game, but you can also save it for later. But you do have to win with each of your archetypes throughout the match. Is the plan?
Well, speaking of Brazil and some of Brazil's best players, and also speaking of Pedro Pertusi, let's move into the results from the Sao Paulo Regional Championships this weekend, which was indeed won by Pedro Pertusi. And yet again, it is Charizard on top. Is this just what we're going to be experiencing this format as all?
It's really interesting because this is like the first, not the first. Because I guess like this feels Lugia format esque. With the idea of that the best deck is also winning everything, right? But
Yeah.
even Lugia wasn't winning to. Well, we've only had 4 tournaments in this format so far, and it's going to be a shorter format, but there's still a decent amount of tournaments in this format. But was gonna say, it didn't feel like Lugia even felt this dominant as far as wins go. But like if you're in the tournament, playing in the tournaments, Lugia definitely felt more dominant than Charizard does, and it was also reflected in the meta percentages, which we don't have for this tournament. But my guess it was probably around like 30%. That
Day
Charizard
one.
was, yeah. My guess is Charizard was probably close to 30%. Day two, 27. But would you really expect it to go down or up? I'd probably expect it to go up going to day two.
It's
Well,
been going down
it has
at
been going down.
it has been going down, but and that's usually pretty common, to be honest. It's not often that you see the number 1 deck day 1 go up in Metashare into day 2. It was pretty much
That's true.
only in the Lugia format that we saw it. It
That
was
probably has to
going
do with
from 30% day 1 into 50% of day 2.
yeah, Lugia was a much easier deck to play than Charizard, especially with
Yes.
how much the Charizard lists have evolved to be it. I don't like using the term greedy, but like more refined to the point where there's less of everything, but more options. It becomes that much more difficult to play, right? We're going
Does
down
it
to more and more one
feel
of counts.
a little Lux Chomp X-esque to you as far as a BDIF format, right?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Where it's like it's the best deck, but
But
like
it's like a pretty skillful deck as well, and
extremely
like
skillful. I think that's really underrated. How and I think it reflects into players that are doing well with Charizard. I see a lot of people talking about Charizard on Twitter, like talking about, but you look at the 3 players who top aided this tournament with Charizard, and these are all like 2 of them, Pedro Petrucci, Ricardo, play together, work together, in that top group from Latin America. And then the other one, Alex Silva, no stranger to success in the game, definitely a name I know. I'm sure a
yes.
decent amount of other players recognize as well. Like the 3 players in the top 8 are all top level players in Latin America who are in the top 8 with Charizard. And then the 4th highest placing Charizard player is William Azevedo, who just top 4'd EYC, just top 16'd Orlando, and was on the winning end here in Sao Paulo. So people talk about Charizard. I see people say that they they don't think the deck is that hard. It's not hard to turn 2 Candy a Charizard, but the resource management throughout a full game, especially in the mirror match, up
Yeah.
against stuff like Lost Tina, or even more decks that can be more aggressive against you, like Arc Tina, is like super, super important. You do one wrong quick search and you just like lose the game. So it definitely is like a way harder deck than it seems to play.
Did you see this tweet from Liam today? He said, "The Charizard mirror is like blackjack. You make decisions so you can tell yourself it's not gambling, but it still is."
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I assume Liam is kind of making this statement, having probably just tested the Charizard mirror against himself or a fairly high level player. And at the top end of Pokemon, if both players play perfectly, it literally just is RNG that is the determining factor. So he's not wrong, but that is just what Pokemon is if both players play perfectly, right? And then there's no second guessing as to what's in your opponent's deck or what's in their list, right? You're not trying to play around the unknown. You're just playing around the known and trying to play perfectly. And if you do try and replicate a perfect game of Pokemon in testing, it is just going to come down to RNG. So, I mean, Liam has some good takes, some bad takes, some NBA memes. Overall, a
Plenty of
really good player,
NBA
obviously. Yeah,
memes.
plenty of NBA memes. I think this is a pretty. I don't even know if I want to call it a bad take, just like a lukewarm take. It's like you kind of just describe Pokemon. Like I don't know. I don't know if
It's pretty different in tournaments though, because usually in tournament there is the unknown factor,
there
right?
is the unknown factor for
If
sure.
you're
Yeah.
even against if it's 2 top tier players against each other, there's the unknown factor of, like, do they play this? Do they play that, you know?
Yeah, I don't even wanna say this is a bad take, it's just a very cold take. It's just kinda like stating the obvious, like, when both players play really well, yeah, that's how it's gonna feel.
But yeah, Pedro's winning list here, definitely a bit different from what we've
Yeah,
seen so far. I mean, the first thing that's going to stick out to most people is definitely the A spec choice here, and that is the Hero's Cape. Now, we've seen this pop up a little bit. There was a group of North American players that played it to Orlando that widely did pretty decently. There's also the double team devolution in here, which is a throwback to, what Pedro and William have been playing. They've also got the Erie in here, so that's not too big of a surprise. But yeah, the
yeah.
Hero's Cape, and then also the Mist Energy being added back in here. What do we think of these polls here, Azul?
Also, only 2 Iono. That's, like, the next card I would kind
Yeah,
of
sure, sure,
shout out there. But yeah, the Hero's Cape is basically like, if you don't care about Mirror Match, Hero's Cape is probably the best ace spec to play. Really good against Lugia, really good against Shin Pao, and it's not as situational as something like the Prime Catcher or the Maximum Belt. You could always get value out of the Hero's Cape in the Lugia matchup, in the Shin Pao matchup, against Espathra, against Ancient Box. This is by far the best ace spec in Charizard if you're not concerned with the mirror match. Because like up against the Chien Pao matchup, you need them to open Chien Pao, you to take a knockout before them, and have Candy Zard Maximum Belt to take advantage of it. But at some point against Chien Pao, you can always just throw a Hero's Cape on your Charizard and be like, okay, now you need 7 energy to KO this with the Chien Pao. So you have that. And I think they probably paired this like the reason they probably went with the Hero's Cape is because they still have the double TM Devo, so they still have a tech for mirror, right?
sure.
So they felt like they didn't need the little bit extra that you can gain from the maximum belt or the prime catcher, and we're like, okay, we can play towards all the other matchups, towards the Charizard hate more than the mirror match because we're still gonna be running that double TM Devo. Have the Erie as well. Erie's like okay in mirror. It's not like it's a little bit more of like it's definitely really really strong against Chien Pao, and I'd say that's its best matchup. It's like maybe you catch something in mirror match, maybe you don't. But yeah, that's kind of the reason to play the Hero's Cape. So if you still have something for the mirror in the double team Devo, I can get it. Also, if you really feel like you're that good at the mirror, you're that good with Charizard. Which to be honest, if you're Pedro or you're William or any of these guys, you that's the way you might feel right now, to be honest. It's like, all right, we're the best Charizard players, and we're not really scared of anyone in the mirror match. So we're gonna play an ace spec that is probably the worst ace spec in the mirror are the ones you'd play, which is the Hero's Cape. We still got the double team Devo, and we just feel like our list is that much better. Our play will be that much better. We'll let that carry us here.
Yeah, still got the Turo scenario in here. Yeah, and sticking with the Pidgeot, Bibarel, Cleffa engine that
Yeah,
board kind of popularized. I mean, they had the Cleffa at LAI or EUIC as well, but
yeah.
the Bibarel
One
has
less
decided
one
to
less thing
stick
I will
around.
mention is there is value to be gained from Hero's Cape in the mirror match. You can put it on your Pidgeot to
Hmm.
make their Pidgeot KO turn weaker. Especially once you've dealt with some of their draw power, the B-Barrel and the Pidgeot, you can like theoretically get a ton of value out of the Hero's Cape because they won't be able to as easily find the vacuum. Or maybe they just truly think that is the best, even with every Charizard list playing vacuum. Maybe they think Heroescape is literally the best ace spec in the mirror. I find that hard to believe that it actually is. Um, but it actually might be, right? What if they're just on that next level? They've tested the mirror match to the point where like, oh wait, Cape is actually the best because these couple scenarios keep coming up in our testing. Let's just run the Heroes Cape. And for the mist energy, I feel like this has to be a tech for Roaring Moon more so than anything.
Yeah.
Because I think if you want to have a better chance against Lost Zone decks, you want to be playing Jirachi for sure. Jirachi is, I would say, is just so good against Charizard when you don't have Jirachi. So I think if you're gonna be teching specifically for Lost Zone stuff, because like Miss Energy stop Star Requiem, but stopping Stabilize is just so much more important as far as like something to shut down against Lost Zone decks, especially
It
like the Turbo Lost box.
it can also shut down TMD though as well, which is
Yeah,
kinda
that is
nice,
true. So
right? Throw it on the Pidgeot.
more for mirror match, right? So you have that
Yeah.
little bit extra. Makes not having the prime catcher or the maximum belt feel that less worse overall. And we do see them compensate for not having the prime catcher in here by going with the double counter catcher, which we haven't seen for a little while.
Yep.
Usually it's one counter, one prime, two boss with the Yell Cheer or the Pal Pad.
Yep.
I guess another thing to shout out or to point out there, no cheer, no Pal Pad is like these are the cards. This is what we need to win games in the matchups. We're not going to play anymore. And they did rock the Pal Pad at UIC and Orlando, I believe.
I am feeling like they also played the Pal Pad. I can go check real quick though. But and one thing I did want to mention as well, you're talking about the Heroes Cape, the value in Jim Pal matchup. I will say a lot of Chien Pao lists have been playing Lost Vacuum now. It's making its way into most of the lists. I think if you look at the top 32 lists, none of them had a super deep run in Sao Paulo, but all of the top 32 lists, I think it looks like, did play
Really? What is that
the
for?
Lost Vacuum. It's really good against Iron Hands is kind of I think the main one.
Okay.
Um, but then also like with Heroes Cape kind of popping up, becoming a thing. Also, Fabrizio did play a Lost Vacuum as well in his top 8 Orlando list.
Interesting, interesting.
But yeah, looking back to Orlando, William and Pedro did have Pal Pad in their list.
Yeah, that feels like I mean, and I my Chien Pao, whatever it's called, knowledge right now is pretty low, but it feels such a it's not a consistency card, so I immediately like dislike it in Chien Pao. But power cards are good to play if there's enough situations, right? If there's enough situations, it's definitely worth playing it. Maybe it has some value in like the ancient matchups as well. I don't know,
Yeah, I
maybe
think that's another good reason to play it. That matchup is probably still pretty bad,
yeah.
even with that
But if
option.
Hero's
But
Cape does become like the number one tool in Charizard, I could definitely see it becoming the a go-to in Chien Pao for sure.
yeah, it was in Bastion's list here. It was also in Yerko's list. Both of
Yep.
them had the Lost Vacuum. And oh,
Lost
I missed
Vacuum.
one as well. Top 16 from Andres also had the Lost Vacuum.
And everyone on the vacuum. Yeah, I mean, maybe there's more validity there than I think. But yeah, I mean, whenever I look at a Chien Pao list and there's a non-consistency card, I'm like, I don't know, is that really worth it? I feel like we want to
Yeah,
be
it's like
setting
they're
up
not
a
cutting any consistency here, though, right? I mean, I guess like the argument would be like, okay, is a third Bidoof better than Lost Vacuum potentially, right?
it's
But they've
third
already got four
Pokestop,
Nest Ball,
third
they've got four
Bidoof.
Ultra Ball. Yeah, another Pokestop, sure, sure.
I would say second vessel, but they are rocking the double lightning, so I feel like that kind of I don't know if you want two lightning, two vessel, that feels like a lot, but
Yurko and Andres here did have the double vessel.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's always like yeah, like there's no Silene in this list specifically. Is Silene better than the vacuum? Who knows? I'm not sure.
They do have the third Bidoof here. Pretty
What
interesting.
about
But
fourth Bidoof? I wouldn't hate it. I would not hate a fourth Bidoof.
just set up the
We need those
squad.
suckers. Yeah.
Um, but in second place here at Sao Paulo, we have seen the best finishing Lost Box so far this format. Lost Box has really kind of been having a rough go of things post rotation here thus far, but we do have Nico Galaz, pretty good player as well. He and Diego Casiraga, of course, former world champion, both played this list here. Pretty similar to what we've been seeing. They do have the Mew
Yep.
EX in there,
Yeah.
which I don't think you see every single time, but I don't think there's anything that's too big of a surprise in this list. Just looks like a pretty solid Lost Zone deck.
Yeah. Yeah. And watching the if anyone is interested, definitely go check out the YouTube video on my channel where I uh put the top four in the finals matches into a video on my YouTube channel, and Galaz was in both those matches, so you get to see a lot of action from the Lost Zone deck up against the number one deck in the format, Charizard, and honestly, watching it play out, especially due to the lack of Jirachi, which is something we might see Charizard players have to start respecting, is Sableye. Sableye is just so powerful in that matchup if you don't have Jirachi. And if Charizard
True.
players continue to disrespect Sableye, uh, I mean, I don't know if I want to leak here, but we're gonna get to the point where just Sableye into TM Devo is just like gonna be farming Charizards. So I think we'll see Charizards like flip the switch. I think they're gonna start adding Jirachi back in. Now that Lost Box has kind of proven itself, we'll get to see it get more popular. Lost Tina, I don't know how what the highest placing Lost Tina was in this event, but same thing. Sableye is just so powerful in so many situations against Charizard, especially with the turbo. Oh, there was the top eight, yeah. Especially with the turbo. Um, the turbo lost box because you can get to Sableye turn two going first, even. So yeah. Definitely, I think we're gonna see these people flip back to the Jirachi. But it's hard to like want to play everything. So I feel like then you have to give up the mist. The Aurora and Moon matchup starts to struggle, but I think you'd rather be beating having some protection against Sableyes versus the frenzied gouging of the
Would
moon.
you though? I mean, it definitely feels like we're still in a point in the format where Roaring Moon EX is more popular than Sableye.
Between Tina and Lost Box?
I guess that's probably true.
Yeah, you get them both involved. But the mist energy is really good against this deck as well, because the only way for this deck to
Yeah.
want to KO a Charizard is the gouging. But if you're leaving your bench so vulnerable to Sableye, it just feels so bad. But yeah, the Lost Zone deck, just in general, I think it's pretty solid. I think it might be better than I give it credit for. Pedro was actually in my chat while we were watching the games. And Pedro seems to feel pretty confident into the Charizard matchup with this deck. And watching Galaz pilot it and seeing like the possibilities and what the deck could possibly do in situations, it definitely feels like it's not a terrible matchup into Charizard. That's for sure. Prime Catcher does a ton in that matchup, giving you so much aggressive win conditions and late game win conditions. It's kind of crazy to see. And one card that it did feel like Galaz was missing from a lot of situations in game two, I believe it was the counter catcher, which I believe Pedro did run at EUIC. And Pedro was even saying that he had talked to Galaz prior to this tournament about the deck. So just after watching the set from Galaz
Pedro
in top
Torres.
four,
Pedro
Pedro
Torres.
Torres, yeah, Pedro
Yeah, yeah,
Torres.
yeah. Not
Um,
Pedro Pertusi, who
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
After watching this set from the top four in the finals, it definitely feels like counter catcher still fits pretty well into the Charizard matchup as far as lineups go. So that'd be a probably a decent inclusion back into the deck.
A couple more Charizards here in top four. We do see Alex Silva, Ricardo, of course, who tests with Pedro. We do have the one lost Tina in top cut, pretty similar to the list your crew has been playing. There is the TM Devo in here.
Yep. The Devo is interesting. Gives you a way to just kind of do something pretty relevant on the board against Charizard without because a lot of times as the Tina player in like the early game against them, you'll just like go Abyss Seeking again after they punch. But and then beat up to CM Devo instead probably is a little bit more impactful, especially if you're still going to get to the 7 or the 10 on the following turn in the loss zone.
Just forcing
Um,
out another use of a resource.
yeah, and it's also possible if Charizard ever had to discard a rare candy or they prize a rare candy, they can't immediately follow up with Candy Pidgeot, Candy Charizard, so they just immediately lose their Pidgeot, which is one of the main game plans as Tina against Charizard currently
Yeah.
is Gust KO the Pidgeot. And also, it does open up to the possibility of those big TM Diva plays. Cram a little bit, maybe a Greninja play happens, a Sableye or two, and then TM Diva wipe the board of like all Charizards and Pidgeot.
We did see Gardevoir here in the top eight. Pretty similar to Josh Frink's list, it looks like, which is pretty similar, of course, to Fabian Pujols' list from EUIC. Kind of feels like this version of the deck is kind of becoming the norm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just seems like a solid deck that's going to stick around in the meta.
Yeah, the only thing, so the one standout here is there's a research in here over the collapsed slash second Turo, which board fixing with this deck feels super important. So that is an interesting standout to me. I guess one other thing we could mention is Gabriel Fernandez won again with guard
Yeah,
four. I
dude.
think the big standouts for Gabriel was had the collapse like compared to this list and didn't play the Klefki, which was interesting to me because Klefki feels pretty powerful in the deck unless I missed it on the deck list. But yeah, Fernandez, we just talked about it last week. Like I was saying, did we talk about it last week? Whereas I feel like the era of prodigies in the juniors and
We
seniors
talked about it.
divisions.
I don't know that
Oh, did we not talk
it
about it on the
wasn't on the
cast?
podcast. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, me and Chip had talked about this, and this is something I had mentioned before. I think on the podcast, I was like, we're very close to entering the era of prodigies in the Pokemon TCG, and whereas we're gonna see like we're initially going to start with one or two kids where it's like they win everything in juniors and seniors or in the finals of everything, either against one other kid or they're the only one who's consistently there over and over. And we haven't really seen, I think we will get to that point for sure. And it'll continue to grow from there where it'll be like the same exact. And there is like very, very much kids in the juniors and seniors who are in top eight like all the time. But I think Gabriel is definitely pushing it to another level
Yep.
right now that we haven't seen before ever in
I
juniors
mean,
or seniors.
one
Um,
Worlds, one LAIC, one EUIC. I mean, just those 3
and
back
then
to back to back.
won both Latin American regionals.
I
Did get
mean,
ninth at or not Orlando at
Charlotte.
Charlotte, the one
Yep.
that Vinny won. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think Gabriel is kind of the first showing of that in the juniors and seniors divisions, where he is kind of just winning everything. And we're gonna start to see more kids in the juniors and seniors division gonna be getting coaching very early on in their careers from very, very good players at a very young age. And they're gonna be winning everything, like literally everything. Because I think there's a big enough potential of skill gap in those divisions for that to happen for sure. And then when they get to masters, I think it's gonna start to change the landscape of the masters division as well. We're probably like 3 to 5 years out from that. But these next couple of years, I think we're going to start to see one or two players in the juniors and the seniors, and it'll expand to more and more and more as things get more competitive. But they're going to be winning literally everything. I think Gabriel's kind of the first showing of that, and I don't know how many years he has left in seniors, so we'll see
I think he
how
has
long
a
he can keep
couple
this up
more. I
for.
think he has at least one more year after this one.
Yeah, so we'll see how long he can keep it up for. We'll see how he does at Worlds this year's, but I think he's kind of the first showing of that. I feel like. And I know there is when I brought this up in my chat the other day, people were shouting out names of juniors and seniors who obviously do very well, but I'm talking about a different level. I'm talking about literally winning everything, not top eighting all the time, not making it to the final sometimes, not winning some. I'm talking about I think there's the potential in the juniors and seniors division for we're gonna start with like one player in each division, probably maybe two, where they're the only people who win anything.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of consistency from a lot of good juniors and seniors, but I think there's another level to it that is possible, and we'll start to see it eventually.
Yeah. Definitely. It would be cool to, yeah, enter that era of the game for sure if that's the direction we're headed.
I mean, it makes sense, right? These things are gonna get more competitive, and then that will eventually change the landscape of the Masters division where, yeah, I won't be able to keep up anymore for sure. If I'm still playing by then, um, I think my time would come up by the time they make their way to the Masters division, but we'll see.
We did see an Argentina make top 8 at the Sao Paulo regionals. Nothing crazy in this list, I don't think either. Yeah, we were
Triple
talking
Lost
about last
City?
week how like Judge just feels really good in the
Yeah.
format right now, and this is probably just the deck that utilizes Judge the best.
Yeah, I think so, right? Like, just being able to turn 2 Judge. Charizard, as the lines in Charizard get thinner and thinner of everything, Judge becomes like a more and more impactful card. Like Iono is always kind of like you never know how good Iono is going to be to Iono a Charizard player, right? Because they're going from like, I mean, unless they have like a 9 card hand off a Rotom, it's usually like a Cleffa up to 7 or a Rotom around to like 6 to 8. So an Iono, it could hit him really hard, it could not. But a Judge going down to 4, they might still get the Candy Charizard off, but the Candy Pidgeot, Candy Charizard, maybe a B Barrel gets involved because we've been seeing some turn twos from these Charizards are just crazy. It's just like B Barrel into Candy Charizard with Candy Pidgeot. Just like, all right, well, I mean, how
Yeah.
do you lose from here? You hit him with a Judge, it's gonna be a lot harder. And we actually see the Prime Catcher in there, which I kind of like. It allows you to be a lot more aggressive. You take away their lone Pidgey, you take away their B Barrel, specifically in the Charizard matchup. And I could definitely see that being the better inclusion than the Maximum Belt, which does allow your team to get a 1-hit KO on a Charizard eventually. But like if you're getting the KO on the Charizard, they've set up at that point, right?
Yeah,
So I feel like
Judge
the
on its
Prime
own is
Catcher,
pretty strong,
yeah.
but Judge plus Prime Catcher, that can be pretty gross, right? And you throw the
Mhm.
Lost City into the mix as well.
The city, I don't know
Um,
how I feel about the Lost Cities, to be honest. I don't. Do we want Lost City over just more consistency? Maybe. Second Iron Leaves, honestly, I don't hate the idea of as well. Um,
or
or
like
just two
Super Odd
ways.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe the Super Odd should come first. So I'm not sure how I feel about the Lost Cities. I know Joe Turrentine was hyping him up post Orlando after losing the win in there and ending up in top 16. And we've seen a couple different builds. I feel like start to stabilize from there. There's like the trekking shoes build that we saw got top 16 as well there in Orlando. And there's this build with the Lost Cities. I just don't know how to feel about the Lost Cities. Like, is it that impactful against Charizard? I don't know. I think it's really good against everything else, though, for sure. So it's not that great against Lost Tina, but it's good against Guardy. It's good against Lost Box. It's good against Chi and Pow. You can chase the back Excaliburs and the B barrels. It's also good against Ancient Box decks, right? Ancient Moon, Ancient Box. So it's good against all of those decks. Lost Cities against Charizard feels like which is weird to play a card that is like not that great against the best deck in the format. But
Sure.
if it's that good against everything else, I guess it can't hurt
And
much.
then it took us a few tournaments, but we do finally see a Lugia V-Star breaking into top 8 at one of these majors. Pretty standard for most things we see here. One thing I will call out here is like the one single copy of Great Ball is definitely the lowest count I feel like I've seen of the Great Balls. Right,
Yeah,
most of the time it's like minimum two, and then oftentimes people are trying to get three, trying to get four in there. But in favor here in this list, I think of playing a little heavier Pokemon count. Right, there are
yep,
four Lugia V. Of course, the four Minccino, which has kind of become standard. Double Luminion, you don't see too often in the Lugia. I think is there only 16 energies in
yeah.
this list, it looks like, with just the two copies of the Mist. And then a lot of supporters too, four Research and three Iono, three Boss, one Serena, and the one Jack.
Yeah, I like the way this list is kind of headed. I think there's still some more work to be done on refining Lugia. Um, I like the 4-3 Lugia. I like the 4-3 Cinccino. I've been preaching for Mancino for a long time, and recently I've been giving a shout to for Lugia V as well. I also think you want to go second as Lugia. You just need to set up like not that many decks can take advantage of you going second
Yeah.
as well. You don't even care if Charizard gets set up, but you need to get off the read the win. You need to get off the call for family. You need to get off the double supporters. So your turn two looks way cleaner. Because otherwise, if you give your opponent the two turns of supporters for their turn two, they're probably going to start beating down on you while you're using read the win turn two. So I think choosing second, you need just maximizing Pokemon. And 16 energy seems to become the norm, but from all the Lugia games I saw over the weekend, the Lugia players were coming up a little bit short on energy pretty consistently. So I feel like maybe the bump back up to 17 has to happen. Not too sure. Would have to mess around with a little bit more myself, but I like this list and I like the way that Lugia lists are headed as well because like I think it's the way the deck has to be played. With that said, I'm still not too hype on the deck. It did get its first top 8 here. I expect it to be like a pretty decently played deck moving forward, but still not too high on Lugia overall, to be honest.
So those are the standout decks I think of. Well, obviously, I mean, those are the top 8 decks right here. But if we look at day 2, something that is missing that was extremely popular in day 2 of this tournament, tied with a bunch of other decks for the third most popular archetype in day 2, is the Espathra. So what do you make of this, Azul? Espathra being pretty popular in day 2. It was played by a handful of pretty good players as well. Victor Freitas has been a pretty good top 32 consistent finisher in Brazil. He had a good run in one of the Players' Cups as well during the COVID era. And then you've got, of course, Vinny is a name that most people are going to know at this point after he won the Charlotte Regionals. And then Joao Pedro Medeiros Zambrano is a very good and has been hasn't had a great finish in a little while, but did just get top 16 at
Yeah.
EUIC. Um, he played the deck, and then also Otavio, who got top 8 at Worlds back in 2022. He chose to play the deck. So like no one did that well with it. You know, we see a couple
Yeah.
here in the top 32, but I think it is like anytime I see a lot of like recognizable names going to a specific archetype that is like an off meta pick, it always makes me kind of like, scratch the head a little bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it makes you like definitely want to investigate the deck a little bit more as well.
Because
'Cause
they've surely
definitely
put in the, like, testing necessary to think, like, "Yeah, this is, like, good enough play for this tournament," right? Or, like,
yeah.
feel confident enough in at least the Charizard matchup, right, to want to play the deck.
Yeah, you'd think. Or they just saw Braden play with it at Orlando on stream, like, "Oh, that's a cool deck. Let's play
Well, but if they
that."
saw Braden play with it on stream in Orlando or on stream at AUIC, they would probably not want to play the deck because he got thoroughly dismantled by Charizard in both of those games.
That's funny. I didn't know how it went at Orlando. I just know he made it onto stream. I
Yeah,
know
he
he
lost
did
to
I think
Pedro.
I think he did say he did throw at UIC on stream.
Yeah, he didn't really throw, I don't
Um,
think, in Orlando, he just got beat.
yeah.
He didn't
The
draw the
deck
best in the second game, maybe it was the first game if I'm remembering right.
Yeah, I honestly just don't know how good of a Charizard matchup this deck actually has. You obviously have the Espathra. I think the biggest thing the Espathra does, besides Charizard is weak to grass. You still need a decent amount of energy on the Espathra side to get the one hit KO. But I think the biggest thing is you make the Charizard player really have to work for their knockouts. Needing that extra energy on your Charizard over and over again becomes pretty taxing on the resources eventually. Also, most lists only play that one Charmeleon. And the decks all are overall becoming a little bit less consistent with like how many supporters they play. We even look at the list from Pedro winning Sao Paulo. There's only 2 Iono in there, 3 Arvin. You know, you Bonnet lock them early and they can't find their Charmeleon. And then all of a sudden you can just like get 2, maybe even 3 prize cards through Bonnet before they actually get to even play the game, right? Or maybe they just prize Charmeleon and you just win. So there's a couple different ways it can kind of tackle the matchup. But at the end of the day, I honestly just don't know how good of a matchup this has into Charizard. And then outside of that, you definitely have some bad matchups, right? Uh, Ancient is fine, of course, but like the Lugia matchup is tough, and I wish some of the I think Gardevoir is tough as well. Lugia, Gardevoir. You're really good against Chien Pao because you do have the Banette EX for the item lock. After they go for one big one hit KO, you just item lock them the rest of the game, or go for like an early item lock, make it awkward for them to ever even set up. Argus never set up a Excalibur, right? And then you just kind of win through item lock. So those are some good matchups. I have to imagine the Lost Tina matchup has to be tough as well, but
Vinny tweeted about his tournament. He played 6 Espathra mirrors, which is ridiculous.
I don't think the deck was that popular. So that was definitely a
A little bit of a low roll there, right?
yeah, a little bit of a low roll. Dude, all the matchup roulette believers are like fiending. They're like, "Yes, it exists. It's real. It's not real. Play your games. Learn how to win, overcome bad matchups or weird matchups." He did hit 6S Pathra, but we don't see Vinny mentioning matchup roulette in the tweet, so
I mean, he
gotta
did
point
say
that
he
out.
went 402 versus the mirror, so
Gotta ask him if you're gonna play as Pathra, might want to hit up some Vinny for some tips on the mirror edge,
yeah,
just in
he's
case you hit
the
6.
most experienced player in the world at the Espathra mirror.
Yeah.
Vinny
Knows more than
Fernandez.
literally anyone else. Yeah, I'm actually curious, but I would really like to know. That's like one thing that really lacks from these Latin American regionals. They do still have a stream that happens, which is great to see. It being still put together over there. I don't know what that situation is. If it's kind of just like the
Grassroots or
community coming together, grassroots kind of stuff happening. So it's great to see that it's still happening over there in some form as far as the stream goes. I think we will eventually get to the point where TPCI takes over that like they did Europe, and that'd be really good to see as well. And them do the whole production that they do for here in America and Canada, and then over in Europe as well. Bring that to Latin America. That'd be sick to see eventually, if not next season, hopefully the season after. Um, but one thing that we definitely lack is definitely data from the tournament. Day one meta percentages. We do have the day twos, but the day one meta percentages would be really, really interesting to know. So we do lack like a little bit of data overall as well from these tournaments in Latin America, which would be really nice. I like looking at that kind of stuff. That stuff always really interests me. But because I would love to know how popular Charizard was. It seemed pretty popular though, for sure. But yeah, the Espather deck, further investigation is needed. Is it fraudulent? I definitely like on the scale of fraudulent to non-fraudulent, it's leaning towards fraudulent for me for sure. Gotta what's it called? Coin that term. That's gonna become a term for sure. I'm gonna keep using it. It's gonna get there. Fraudulent is like gonna be the new term in Pokemon. Everyone's
I
gonna be using
mean,
it.
it's been a thing. I mean, fraudulent is a word
Well,
that
yeah,
like
it's a word, but nobody uses it the way they're gonna
okay,
start
sure.
using it. Start using fraudulent. Give me credit.
What is up with this fraudulent propaganda? That's some fraudulent propaganda right there.
I guess one thing to point out: ancient decks. Um, the highest placing ancient deck was the Moon from Javier. I'll give a shout out here to Javier. Um, was on stream for a match, and actually, just one of like the best games of Pokemon played on stream that I've seen. Maybe not ever, but in a while for sure. Javier played it super well. Played against Alex Silva, who we've already kind of given him his flowers and everything, and also played very well as well. So yeah, I put that match on my YouTube channel because I thought it was just a really well played game of Pokemon. So I recommend everyone just go kind of watch that. And specifically from Javier's side, Silva's playing Charizard and set up, so it was really for Javier to try and puzzle and piece some plays together in some of the games. So yeah, just a really really good game of Pokemon being played from Javier in that one. So I recommend everyone go check that out on my YouTube channel. But yeah, the ancient. This is as far as ancient went, right? Was Javier 10th place with the Moon. This deck I think is a little bit less fraudulent than I was calling it out last week.
You know, fraudulent's only gonna become a thing if you're not like you can't be overusing it. We gotta pump the brakes a little bit here, buddy.
I did call it fraudulent last week. But I don't know. I put in some time with the deck as well, and I think the deck is okay. The deck is solid. It does really hope that Charizards don't that Miss Energy does not become the norm in Charizard. That's for sure. You can include the Sinnoh or the what's the other one? The
The
Sinnoh or the
Mawile.
Mawile. But if they hit you with an Iono plus a Mist, it's gonna be hard to piece everything together for a big knockout on that turn, even if you do play the card. So That's kind of the biggest thing is if all the Charizards include Mist, probably not a good time to be playing Roaring Mooniacs.
Just gotta say, Mawile is definitely way better than Temple for anyone out there who's
Um,
debating something.
but stadiums are good in the deck. That's like the only big thing I guess I would say.
Yeah,
Like
I don't know that you're cutting, Artisan
that's what people
for
were doing though, was cutting Artisan for a temple.
yeah, which that makes I mean,
But we
that's
could
like
get
sure,
the
that's an easier cut, right?
yeah,
That is
yeah.
an easier cut.
We could get the Mawile involved. You can also discard the Mawile, Super Rod it back, Ultra Ball for it.
You could use it twice with Penny
True.
against
They
the
get 2
control
mist on
deck,
there? Dude, imagine that. You go up against a Charizard with 2 mist energy, and you hit him with the Mawile, Penny, Frenzied Gouging. That would be sick. Honestly, just for that reason, let's go with
Worth it.
Mawile.
Worth it, worth it.
For that
Um
potential.
But yeah, let's go ahead and recap our predictions from this past week. So once again, we did the how many Charizard will be in top 32. Maybe is going to be a mainstay of this format for our predictions for upcoming tournaments. So there were four in the top four. If we go down, there's five, six, seven,
7.
eight in the top 32. We do have
Ooh,
Gustavo bubbling out. I don't know if you saw this bubble, but it was on opponents. So they
yeah, yeah.
Gustavo and Samir had the exact same resistance and the exact same opponents win percentage.
And that's coming up so much more often than it feels like it should, these
Yeah,
last couple tournaments. Like, why is that coming up so much?
it is pretty
Also,
interesting.
yeah, who tweeted that? I forget who tweeted that, but they were basically tweeting, like, how like, the person who gets 32nd gets $1,000. The person who
Yep,
gets 33rd doesn't get $1,000. I don't what do you get? Packs? Um, all right,
18
my
booster packs.
question to you, Chip. Now, people make these statements. They don't come up. They never have a solution.
I've gotten
Usually don't have a
33rd,
solution.
by the way, before.
Yeah.
I know how it
I'm,
feels. It's
I
not
mean, I've
amazing.
gotten ninth on opponent's resistance before. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but for me, I don't know. For me, I never feel like I got scammed by the system. I've never felt like I've been scammed by the system. It's like I could have done more. I could have done better. We go next, right? That's how I feel when those situations happen. And I want to understand the other side of it. And I want to like empathize with the players who feel that way when they're put in that situation. I've never been able to. But if I ask you the question, like um what's the question I want to ask you then? It's like, yeah, what is the is it does this need to be fixed?
Well, it's I think you have to look past the point of because you would look at this situation and you'd be like, I got top 32 or 33rd at a tournament, right? I'm not in the top 8. And you've said before that if you aren't feeling like you're going to make top 8, you've been so successful in the game and also like are such a big competitor in the game that if you are not pushing for top 8, you don't feel like the tournament has been a success for you. So,
Even when I bubble at ninth due to resistance, I don't feel like the system I got cheated by the system. You know what I'm saying? Like, um, even at that point, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, it's hard for me to empathize with people. But yeah, but then I would ask the question to you. Well, I think you probably have a better understanding of that. Definitely sounds like you do from the discussions we've had about this kind of stuff in the past. Like, do you truly think this needs to be changed, or is it kind of just a feels bad moment, and it's okay to feel bad about that?
yeah, I mean, I think it is kind of just a feels bad, right? There's got to be a cutoff somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
and opponents, like, yeah, there needs to be a tiebreaker somewhere, right? So like,
yeah. Well, and I
it's
think when it
unfortunate.
is opponents, Tom, which is the tournament software, um, literally flips a coin. So,
Yeah, it is truly random. It used to be alphabetical,
yeah.
but now it's just truly
That
random, I
which
think.
that is dumb.
Yeah, 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 that is
I
pretty
would be
dumb.
annoyed at that more so than, like, if it was a coin flip. I don't know, I mean, it does feel pretty bad to lose out on $1,000 on a coin flip for nothing
Yeah.
that
Nothing you
is
could you it's like, "Let us play," like, "Could we play a match?" Like, I'm sure about
They used to do that back in the day, at Worlds
3rd and 4th, right?
for 3rd and 4th, yeah, you had to play off
Super cringed for
because
nothing.
3rd got a trophy card and 4th did not get a trophy card.
Oh, when did they change that?
2016,
Yeah, it's
17,
been a little
one of
while.
those years, I think.
They used to do that in some, like
Someone else can correct me on that, I'm not 100% sure.
that should never happen, by the way, as well, in, like, competition. Neither of the teams want to play or I say teams because 'cause I'm thinking about esports. Because 'cause I'm about to say there used to be esports competitions I would watch where that would happen, and it felt like neither team was ever invested in that match.
Yeah.
Like, the 3rd, 4th, it's like, just somehow make the bracket or groups or whatever play out where it's like, it is determined in some other way. Um, yeah, it feels really weird to have like, a non-progression match happen. I guess in Pokemon that happens a lot, right? you're playing for top 32 or top 64. You're not in contention for top 8, but,
Yeah.
um, outside of that in competitions, it feels always really, really weird. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there just needs to be, like, a point where, like, nothing happens, right? I mean, I guess you could say that if that happens, what if you just gave $1,000 to the person who got 33rd? Like, and then to make it clear to everyone else, because a lot of people, I think, they think I'm coming from somewhere where I'm not. Like, this is just how I think about it and feel about it, but I'm open to the idea that I'm wrong, or that, I mean, I'm trying to empathize with these people to an extent. But just because someone feels wronged, it doesn't mean it's right for them to need or want more, right? As well. I think that's like a fair statement to make as well. Just because you feel wrong doesn't mean you're entitled to something, right? We do draw a line somewhere in society for things like this, right? And of course, we're talking about a Pokemon tournament in this instance. But yeah, if they
Yeah.
came out and they were
But I
like,
mean,
"Hey,
I
if
think
you..."
it's just it is always it feels bad when it's like you had the exact same
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
yeah,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
as
if they came out and said, like, "Oh, we're gonna give Gustavo $1,000, and in situations like this in the future, they will get equal money," I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine with that." Like, I wouldn't care, but also, does that need to happen? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it does. That's kind of my point. Not against it, but it doesn't feel like something needs to change in that situation. It's just kind of an unfortunate situation.
well, back to our prediction here.
Yeah,
How
go
many
ahead.
Charizards would make the top 32? The answer is 8. Azul predicted 10. I predicted 9. We were both over by a little bit. People were trying to pull out the Charizard hate a little bit, I guess. There's quite a few Lugias
I
here in this
guess,
top
yeah.
32. There's quite a few Chimpaos as well, right? Some stuff that can maybe handle it.
I
Um,
handle it well enough. 3 of top 4 was still
yes, that is true.
Charizard.
That is true. That is
Weathered the storm. And it wasn't like it was by overwhelming numbers. I mean, it's probably the most is Charizard even the most popular deck, or is it kinda close to, like, Chien-Pao here?
no, it was the most popular.
No, no, most
27%
popular
versus
in
8%.
I guess, yeah, it's the most popular day too. I was talking about top 32, but I guess it doesn't matter. Yeah, it does have overwhelming numbers no matter what, right?
Yeah.
No matter way you look at it, it does have the overwhelming numbers.
Highest placing non-Charizard deck. Azul said control. Looks like we've got one player down here at 19th with a control deck. There was Marco Cifuentes did pack a kind of interesting Arceus deck. We didn't really talk about this, but
What would you
he was
call
the
this?
player you predicted to bring
Control
a control deck,
Arceus?
right? This is not exactly control, but like kind of
Disruption
control.
Arceus?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't quite call it a
Annoying
control deck.
Arceus.
Yeah, really cool deck. I was really hoping Marco would make it into the top 8. I think tied or lost the winning in, because I really wanted to see Marco pilot this deck up against a Charizard. I was really excited to see that. We did see Marco on stream against an Arctine. I forget what Marco played against on stream, but I really want to see Marco into the top 8 because there was a good chance we could get Marco on stream against a Charizard, but didn't happen.
Something has happened, and for some reason, I'm hearing like very low to no audio out of my left earbud, and it's like driving me crazy. Been sitting here trying to fix it the last like 5 minutes, and I just cannot figure it out.
Your earbud's just broken?
I just bought these, so I hope not, but
Maybe defective then. Still
uh
feels bad.
well, I bought them like a month ago, so I mean I've been using them. Anyway, but Azul predicted control, it was not control. I predicted Chien-Pao, it was not Chien-Pao, it was Nico Galaz with the Lost Zone box. And then our last prediction was how many people in top 32 will not be playing Prime Catcher. And we didn't do our due diligence ahead of time, but really quick, we can count the number of people who were playing Prime Catcher, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 people who were playing Prime Catcher. So that's a lot of people not playing Prime Catcher
Yeah,
in
that's
the
pretty
top
high.
32, 18.
Wait, how did you Oh, you filtered this? Oh, I didn't even know this filter existed.
Yeah, I just searched the card in Limitless, and then it shows you the most recent tournaments
Oh.
finishes from that
And
card.
what do we say? Top 32
Yeah, we said top 32, and it was 14 people in the
playing.
top 32 playing Prime Catcher. So that
18
means
not?
18
That's
not.
a lot. What are people playing? What do we got in here?
I mean, we got the Zards playing the what's it called? The the Hero's Cape. That's a big part of it.
Lugia's with the Master Balls. All
Yeah.
right, all right.
Plinium Lugias as well. Um, we
Seeing
got
Maximum
some
Belnazard here.
maximum belts. We got more Hero's Cape in the Gardevoirs. There's quite a few
Yeah,
Gardevoir. The
that's true.
Espathra playing the Hero's Cape as well. It's the Hero's Cape, honestly. Yeah, let's look at how many Heroes Cape were in the top 32 here. Quite a bit. Let me expand it here. Yeah, 29th up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Heroes Capes in top 32.
That's a lot of capes. That's a lot
That's
of
a lot of
capes.
capes. That's 900 HP worth of capes.
Yeah, and then a couple master balls in those Lugias. There's an ancient box in there with the awakening drum. And this Archina had a maximum belt. Yeah, makes sense. It's a lot of capes though.
And yeah, so overall on our predictions, neither of us were really super close to any of them. I guess
Nope.
we didn't do great on this tournament. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, the predictions were a little bit rough.
Well, let's move on here. We've been going at it for a while already, and we got quite a few topics to get through. Let's start by talking about NAIC registration. So, NAIC registration is coming up this week. For those who don't know, it will be Thursday, April the 25th at 7 p.m. CDT is what they have listed here. I don't even know. Oh, Central Time, I guess, US, which is where New Orleans is. So that makes sense. Um, Thursday, April 25th, 7 p.m. And then a second wave will be Friday, April 26th at 9 a.m. Central Time in the US. But for some reason, with this registration, with this tournament, the whole last like 2 years for these major tournaments, we have exclusively been using Arcanine Labs. But for
Yeah.
this event, it seems like they have rolled out a new NAIC or a new registration system hosted on Pokemon.com. So this
It's
is interesting.
cool.
I think we've talked about this before, how the registration process as it stands is pretty confusing for Pokemon tournaments, right? It's like
Lack
you
of
might find out about the
information.
tournament on Pokemon.com, but then you got to go to this other website that is like a combination of a couple letters and a number, right? Most people might not even really get the whole RK9 thing. I don't know. But
Yeah. And then if you just go to
it might just be kinda
RK9,
confusing that it's not, like, on Pokemon.com. So I think it, like, kinda makes sense that they would want to do something in-house, but obviously, I think the Arcanine people there's been, some issues this year, but I think, like, we're at a spot right now where things feel pretty good registration wise, right? They've been using the first come, first serve system now. It feels like Arcanine is, in a good spot, but, I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about this, Azul?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like Arcanine has felt pretty good. Like registering felt pretty good, pretty smooth. I still think the information, uh, lack of information, lack of ways to find information is still pretty high. Like if you go to the regional page, still on Pokemon.com, you go there, um, you can see all the regionals happening, but you have no idea when registration is, where registration is, unless they changed that recently. At the beginning of the season, it was not there, or even more recently. Um, and then you wouldn't really know where to go. And from there, all you get is like the tournament organizer name, which is like there's no link to their page or anything like that. You have to like go Google it yourself. Then you have to get to the tournament organizer's website, and even then, like the where registration and when registration are not actually anywhere. You can't find it. It just doesn't exist. For NAIC, they're doing it a little bit differently. They are leading you. They're giving you an information change, information chain a little bit better. But you have to go from this on-site portal, this online on-site Pokemon.com registration, which is great that you're registering for events on Pokemon.com, right? I think we all agree that's a good thing. But from there, then you also have to go to RK9 and register, which they do tell you to do, and that you have to do it. But that's just a little convoluted. I've already done the process myself because I do have a stipend for NAIC, so I got early registration access. I'm already registered for the event. Dope. This is like the one event I was like a little bit worried about maybe getting registration for, so I was happy to end up with the stipend at the end of this quarter to get my guaranteed registration. But it's not that big of a process, and it's not that big of a deal. But it's like why? That is just like feels so weird. It does feel like they're probably next season going to shift to registration being on Pokemon.com, which makes a ton of sense. Because right now the information is all over the place, and getting everything put together is just like difficult to do. To like find everything for newer players, it's like not. It's like such a bad process. It's such a unwelcoming process to like figure out when to register and where to register.
Yeah, and, like, the information is split up between 3 different organizers' websites
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well,
It's
right,
like
for the
Pokemon.com,
regionals.
RK9, then
Yeah,
yeah, the actual organizers, and there's 3 different organizers in America, a
yeah.
couple different ones in Europe. Um, and then when is registration happening is like just they let you know eventually. But even the idea of when it might be happening isn't out there as consistent information either. I mean, Arca 9, I did at the beginning of the season did make a post where they were like roughly 2 months out from the event happening. Registration for most events should be going up, and then that has been consistent, which has been great. But no new player getting to the game right now will see that tweet, right? So they won't know, if they're going to go try and go to LA regionals or we're trying to register for LA regionals before it went up. They don't know when is registration supposed to go up, or where's it supposed to be. But it's like a good sign and a bad sign, I guess, because it looks like we're going to be registering for events on Pokemon.com next season, which is good. But of course, this whole NAIC
I mean, this could
registration
just
thing
be like
that's
the
weird.
field test as well, right? Like try it
Yeah.
out
Well,
for
yeah,
this
of
event.
course.
If it goes well, then they move forward, right? Potentially.
Yeah. But now, yeah, no. So if you're planning on registering or attempting
It
to
definitely
register for
feels like a bummer
NAIC,
though that it's like they're trying it out for what will probably be the most difficult to register for a tournament
yeah, that's true.
maybe of all time outside of
A lot of
Japan.
traffic. But maybe
Yeah.
that's why they did it like this, because maybe Arcanine wouldn't be able to handle the traffic, but Pokemon.com will be able to handle the traffic, or whatever they have set up will be able to definitely handle the traffic. Because I'm assuming once you register on Pokemon.com, your spot is saved. And that's really the initial registration. And then when you go to RK9, you are just like connecting that you've registered with then paying on RK9 basically.
Yeah.
So I think your actual registration is going to be registering on Pokemon.com. You still need to register on RK9 as well.
It is so
Um,
weird though that you have to go 2 places. So it's like you have to sign
yeah,
into the NAIC portal. So here's the little flow chart they tweeted out, right? Before registration opens, you have to ensure your Arcanine profile is accurate and then also pre-register on Rain Focus, which I guess is maybe the like
the event, yeah,
base name or whatever of this program, whatever this is that's on Pokemon.com,
main focus.
to populate your info. Registration opens at this time, which we talked about, wave one, wave two. You sign in to the NAIC event portal to register for your specific tournament, including payment. So you pay on the Pokemon website,
Oh, yeah, I guess
confirm.
you're paying there, excuse me. I messed that up. I said you paid on Arcanine, but you do pay
Yeah,
on the
you pay on the Pokemon website.
yeah.
Registration is complete with confirmation. If not, then you have to go back and start over the process, right? Make sure you got it all figured out. Once you get paid, once you have confirmation of your payment, you then go to RK9 and register for the same tournament. So I don't know.
I mean, and I
It's
assume
like
that
why are we
has
registering for the same tournament twice?
well, because I assume, like, pairings and all that stuff is gonna be still run through
It's
Arcanine,
still
right? So
gonna
you
be
still
yeah,
need
yeah,
yeah.
sure.
But hopefully this is well, one, it's really weird
But
if
like, why
this
does
isn't the
the
process. If we're not going to Pokemon.com next season, then why does this even exist? So I think it's fair to first of all to assume that we're going to Pokemon.com to register for events next season.
or they're
And
at least
then
like fielding that idea?
yeah, yeah. Um I had another thing I was gonna say.
Sorry.
No, no, that's fine. I think I forgot it anyways. I don't remember what I was gonna say, but yeah, well, I think it's fair to assume that that's probably happening, right? Or if this goes well, then it'll probably happen. I wonder if we'll be using RK9 still or not. I assume we will because still gonna be like how we run tournaments, like look at your pairings and stuff. I assume. I don't know to be honest. We'll see. I guess it'd be weird for them to not for this not to, if this is just an NAIC thing. That'd feel a little bit weird unless it is for that reason I said of just like traffic. Unless they put this portal together to simply handle the traffic, the amount of people who are going to be getting on during these waves to register for NAIC. That could be the reason, to be honest.
Yep. So yeah, we'll see how this ends up going this week with registration. And we'll also, I guess, this week as well, kind of see some of the numbers of how many people are registered, which will be interesting to watch as well. Kind of
Currently,
feeling like it's going
it's
to most likely be the biggest tournament of all time. I don't think that's a bold prediction by any means. Well,
it might actually be like what is the biggest tournament in Japan ever? We might get bigger than that. It's possible.
yeah, than any of the Champions Leagues. I think
Yeah.
that I've seen, maybe it was on PTCG Legends on Alex's site that there was apparently some tournament in Japan back in, like, the late '90s that had, like, 20,000 people at it,
What?
but that, I think, includes that might I don't know if that includes, like, spectators or what that is or something like that. I feel like
Be
there was an
20,000 people who
article on
looked at
his
the venue
site.
during the weekend, but that's a lot of people. What? That's a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess on top of all that as well, I think there was. Oh, we could talk about this. We didn't talk about this. We got to throw this in here. The early access to registration based on play points
Yes.
being that's real, right?
Who tweeted that? Let me pull up that tweet.
Um, Calamot, I think. Calumet? I don't know I think it was Calumet. Calumet. How do you say that?
Calumet.
Uh,
I can't find him on Twitter though.
um,
Oh, here we go.
here we go. But this wasn't fake, right?
No, but it was only for people under
Yeah,
18, I
under
believe.
18 with a certain amount of play
So
points.
here's what happened. Basically, this email was sent out to certain players under the age of 18. It was a new thing. Here it is. Okay, boom. Here's this email person shared that they received. Um, you're receiving this email as we are attempting to pilot a new program for our international championships. With this new program, we are looking to help ensure our most dedicated players have a chance to attend our most prestigious events. Typo. While some pre-registered, while some pre-reserved registration has been
Well,
set aside for our
prestigious
top.
events and non-prestigious events, all events. The most
Oh,
prestigious events.
okay.
No,
And
I'm
events.
trolling. That's definitely a typo,
Yeah.
right? That has to be. It should
Yeah,
be
yeah,
just our
yeah,
most
yeah.
prestigious events.
While some pre-reserved registration has been set aside for our top championship point earning players per IC qualification period, i.e., those who earned a stipend like Azul or a travel award, we are also looking to award a similar level of our youngest players at the top of our play point leaderboards, as well, who have shown dedication playing in all levels of premier events. So basically, play points potentially matter again, which if you don't know what play points are, I wouldn't blame you because it's a thing that's tracked on Pokemon's website. Basically, you earn play points for participating in play Pokemon events, whether it be Pokemon League, whether it be pre releases, whether it be regional championships, international championships, whatever it is. They used to matter. You used to have a certain amount of play points in order to compete in your country's national championships every single year.
No, it's really low. It was
Um,
like 5. It
it
wasn't
was
very
pretty
much.
low, but I know there was like always a thing where it was like a few weeks before nationals or whatever, people would like have to go out and go play in their local, league for a night or two to
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to make sure they had enough play points to actually go play nationals. But anyway, yeah, it's just interesting. It's like it's bringing back, uh finding a use maybe for something that they already track, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, right? You want the people who have been, um, you know, being dedicated and going to
Yeah.
your events and putting in the work at these events, you want that to, pay off, right? If they want to go to these big tournaments.
Yeah, I don't really hate the idea of it. In fact, we've talked about it before, and I've even mentioned, um, there didn't seem to be like a huge, and what's the discourse around this? Like, I don't know if many people are against the idea of this. I think it's the under 18 thing feels a little weird. Like the fact that they're giving it's kind of funny because I think Pokeduels tweeted out like a week before this that he was missing some play points from the leaderboard and he submitted a support ticket and they basically replied. The support ticket reply he said was basically like, who cares? Or not who cares, but it doesn't really matter because play points don't mean anything anyways. And then a week later, this happens.
Yep.
Um, I guess like another thing with this just kind of happening, it kind of happened out of nowhere, right? No one knew about this. It just kind of happened and there was like no I feel like this would have been good to put in a post on Pokemon.com also announcing when the registration waves were going to happen or something, right? It's like registration waves happening for NAIC. Here are the dates. This is what you can expect. Also, we're trying this new system. We want younger players to be able to participate consistently in our tournaments, especially those that are going out of their way to participate in a lot of tournaments. So players who are under 18 in just the Masters division. I don't know. Did this happen in juniors and seniors? With a certain amount of play points, we'll be able to register ahead of time, similar to how we give priority registration to stipend earners and travel award earners. Yeah, the under 18 thing feels a little bit weird because, like, I don't know why not everyone who reaches a certain play point threshold, why are they not all like they're all dedicated players to the game? They want to show up to the biggest event of the year. They want to play at it. And I don't know. I feel like it's not a bad thing to give them that extended privilege, that pre-registration thing. I also have talked about this before, but I think there should be like more top player privilege as far as that stuff goes. And a lot of people are always against that kind of stuff. But I'm also open to this kind of stuff too, where it's like you don't need a certain amount of championship points. You don't have to be a top player, but yeah, play point threshold, sure. Like I don't know what the threshold should be, but giving priority registration to people who are more involved in the game, whether it be top players or just players who play a lot and want to keep playing a lot, then yeah, I'm all for it to be honest.
Well, we'll give an update next week based on what happens with the new registration here for NAIC
Yep.
and how many people it's looking like the tournament is going to be. Let's move on to our next topic here. Just a couple of new cards to look at. They keep on sprinkling out just a couple new cards every, week or so. It feels like keeping everyone interested. Um,
These will be in our
these
Twilight
will be in
Masquerade
Twilight
set.
Masquerade. Yeah,
Do
the next
actually, that was something I was gonna ask. They have Ogre Pawn yet over in Japan?
they don't.
Okay, good. That kinda suck if they had it and it's just like,
I don't think that
actually,
card's very good, but we'll see.
alright.
That,
Let's
that's
look
my
at the new
opinion.
new cards.
Yeah. Secret box, last new A spec here. Discard 3 cards from your hand in order to use this card. Search your deck for 1 item, 1 Pokemon tool, 1 supporter, and 1 stadium. Reveal them and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck.
Um, so a lot of people have been talking about this card. A lot of people are saying how broken it is. I don't know. The card seems pretty bad because you have to discard 3 cards to play it. To then
Yep.
get like you do get 4 cards. Stadium cards aren't that good. Tool cards aren't
You're
that good.
basically
Item
trading
cards,
4 for 4, right?
yeah. But like tool cards and stadium cards just aren't that powerful right now. Supporters are good. Items are good. The only way to consistently find an item card though is with a supporter. So are we playing Arvin to find this to then use it next turn? Like, or are we just hoping
Yeah.
to
You have
draw
to remember
into
this
it
is a
early
one
game?
of card in your deck,
Yeah.
right?
So overall, I think this card is pretty bad, pretty niche. Like it is bad. Like it's not a prime catcher. It's not even like a hero escape level
Yeah.
A spec. I don't think. I think it's pretty niche A spec. This one honestly might be Neo upper energy tier though overall. Unless we get some items
That let
or
you search for other items.
yeah, items that search for well, that sounds pretty broken though. Would you play Six Poffin? You probably would play Six Poffin, or like Pokemon abilities that search for an item or something. Just some way to find this card
Yeah.
consistently is its
Yeah.
problem. When the most powerful part of it is finding a supporter, and the only way to consistently find it is a supporter. We don't get to use the supporter the card finds because we found it with a supporter, or we're just playing it and hoping we draw into it, right? So yeah, it does not seem great.
Yeah, I also don't think this card seems amazing. A lot of people, yeah, I saw a lot of people freaking out about this card. People were saying it was like broken in Lugia, right? But
I
once
think Master Ball's
again,
better. Master Ball's still
I
probably
mean,
better. Yeah.
yeah, I think you brought up just like the perfect point, right? It's like you don't have a way to go get this card. I have played Lugia a decent bit on the ladder, and it is crazy the number of games that I complete with Lugia without ever seeing Master Ball, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It never hits my hand. I never get to play it. It happens like more than you would think, I feel like. But it's just like, a one of unsearchable item card. This fits in the same exact category, right? And the most powerful
Mhm.
ace specs are being utilized in decks that can search them out and get benefit from them right away. Now, you could like Pidgeot for this card, right? To go get yourself a bunch of cards, right? So
Be like a one good combo. But yeah, but
that
like I
is
said,
something. If there was some Pidgeot
yeah.
deck that could really utilize this super nicely, it goes and gets rare candy, right? So you can have it as an additional out to that potentially in a deck that wants to, put a lot of stage twos in play, like maybe Charizard does. But the ace spec options in the format just feel so much better than this, right?
Yeah, it feels like the impact you could get from that, unless we get maybe as we just get more sets, right? Because I feel like the two parts of this card that are really lacking is the tool card and the stadium card. So we don't have like there's like no huge combo you can put together with those
I
cards
mean,
involved. But
Forest
as
Seal
we get
Stone is a pretty good tool, so
all right, that's a decent one. All right, you're right. You're right.
let's not forget
Um,
that guy.
all right, maybe we're just lacking stadium. But I guess like even like a defiance band could be like a swing card in a certain situation as well. So, but as we get more sets, we'll get more stadiums, we'll get more tools. This card will just get better and better. Um, because like something like Prime Catcher is
Yo,
just
hold
Prime
up.
Catcher,
You
but
ready for it?
go ahead.
This is the deck that uses this card. You ready? We put Flamigo on our bench. We go search our deck for 3 more Flamigo. Then we discard all 3 of them with the secret box.
Ooh, and then we get
United Wings, baby.
it's back. I mean,
Here
it's
we
not
go.
back. It's United Wings.
We've got another new EX here, Luxray EX. A lot of people have been freaking out about this one.
Sounds good. I think so.
Stage 2 lightning type EX Pokemon, and then its attack Piercing Glint for 2 colorless energy, 120 damage. Look at your opponent's hand and discard 1 card that you find there.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's an insanely powerful effect of an attack. It does cost 2 energy. and it is on a stage 2 Pokemon.
Yep.
We do have double turbo energy. This is a lightning Pokemon. We do have electric generator in the format. So there are like options out there that exist to power this guy up. And its second attack is also pretty good, to be honest. 2 lightning energy, 250 damage. Then you discard all energy from this Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, we're living in the days of Pidgeot control right now. Azul, are we on the horizon of Luxray control potentially being a thing?
I think so, and I think you'd probably still play with Pidgeot, to be honest. It'd be like Pidgeot Luxray Control. I mean, just like imagine you get to go if you get a non-double turbo energy on this, or maybe even a double turbo, get a Defiance Band involved, counter catcher their B Barrel, Eerie, or Iono, knockout, plus discard a card from their hand, and it's on a 310 HP Pokemon, which means you're probably not getting knocked out, and then you repeat the process of disrupting them with the attack on the next turn, right? I don't know, it seems pretty good. I'm excited for this card. I think it's pretty powerful. They're given a lot of tools to control in general, it feels like right now, which I'm not 100% against because I do something like a block lax deck is pretty toxic and unfun, but actually interactive control, like what Pidgeot control is like right now and stuff, those are like pretty good decks. At the high end, at the highest end level of play, they're definitely like exciting to watch and exciting to see how those matches play out. And even exciting to play against as well if you're not playing it, but you're playing an attacking deck, because like if you play well, you can beat them, and they have to play really well on their side. It's like a really back and forth interactive game of Pokemon usually. So I'm excited for this card overall. I think.
And there were a couple other new cards here. Nothing else that was, I think, super standout, worth reading. But yeah, those two are definitely the most notable ones. So shout outs to Tuan Lay, as always, for the translations over on Twitter. And with that being said, let's move on to everyone's favorite segment of the cast. But before we get there, we do have to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsor, Dragon Shield. Dragon Shield, of course, has been a big supporter of us here at the Uncommon Energy podcast. We're super grateful for that. They make some of the best sleeves and tabletop gaming products on the market. We use their sleeves for every tournament we play in. I use their sleeves on my cube and my retro decks, all sorts of things. Definitely the go-tos and what we recommend and what we use. Dragon Shield is also celebrating their 25th anniversary. So happy anniversary to Dragon Shield.
Yeah, congrats to Dragon Shield on the 25 years. Hopefully, we'll be working with them for the next 25. Huge fan of their products as always, and really appreciative of them sponsoring the podcast. So big shout out to them in their first 25. And yeah, check them out as always, dragonshield.com. Link, of course, will be in our description. You can use our code UEPOD, get yourself 5% off, and directly support us over here on the podcast as well. Moving on, I just realized I have not picked a card for this week's Guess
Mm.
That Flavor Text. So, Chip, why don't you go ahead and tell them about Guess That Flavor Text?
It is time for everyone's favorite segment, Guess That Flavor Text, where each week Azul or I picks a card, which is what Azul is doing right now, reads off the flavor text, and has the co host try to guess which Pokemon is featured on said card. And then we do keep score. I am currently ahead by a decent bit, but we're on a pretty decent streak here of people getting some points back to back. And yeah, we're actually on a 3-week streak. So I'm gonna see if I can keep that alive. Azul got one right 2 weeks ago. I got one right last week, and Azul got one right the previous. Oh wait, that was not enough. Anyway, whatever. I'm up 24-17. That's the important part. Really, I'm just stalling to give you more time to find a card.
Oh,
Azul,
I went to go like look at the thing. I didn't realize it got flipped the other way around. So I
I
scrolled to the
just am
bottom.
noticing that as well. So
Yeah. We are still on a 3-week streak though.
we are still on a 3-week streak.
All right.
Shout outs to Tim in Games, who keeps a little document for us. To keep us up to date on what the score is, because for a long time we didn't know what the score was. But it is 24-17. I am ahead. There are 3 lifelines. You get 4
Honestly,
points if you don't use any lifelines. The lifelines are what set the card is from, what stage the card is, and read an attack name. I feel like most people who are listening to this part of the podcast probably know what's going on at this point, but yeah, what were
if
you going to
there's
say?
newcomers, we gotta let them know.
Of course, of course, of course.
24-17 actually doesn't sound that bad
Okay. Well,
as compared to like
it sounds
previous.
better than
All
24 to
right, this
17.
week's Guess That
28 to
Flavor
17,
Text.
11-point lead. Come on, let's get it.
When it gets angry, it inhales with all its might, and its body gradually inflates. Sometimes it can grow 20 times larger.
20 times larger. All right. So inhaling air. I mean, I definitely think of like a puffer fish So my first thought is quillfish or overquill potentially.
What about
Hisuian quillfish.
I mean, this one's pretty easy. It's Kirby, like
It's
100%. Lock it
shout
in.
outs to Kirby, bro. Ask a question, Azul.
Is it Kirby?
Kirby says, "Yes." Oh, it is Kirby. This is a relic from the trainer trip chip stream days for those who remember, but
Channel Point Redemption, ask Kirby a question.
as Azul remembers, let's go.
I don't think I ever asked Kirby a question. I can't remember though.
Maybe someday you'll get a chance. Actually, you just did. You literally just asked Kirby a
Yeah.
question.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm stalling. Yeah. Oh gosh. My first thought is definitely Overquill or Hisuian Overquill, Hisuian Quillfish, one of those things. I can't really think of anything else that would like inhale. Let me go with what stage the card is, I suppose.
It is a stage 1.
Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna go with Overquill, I think. Um, I can't think of anything else that it would inflate to 20 times its size. I don't really know the lore of Overquill, if that is even something that it does. I could use a few more lifelines here, but honestly, Azul was kind of making fun of me for the point deficit. So you know what? I'm gonna try to increase my lead. We're gonna make it a 10-point lead and guess Hisuian Overquill. Azul.
Is not correct. What is a Hisuian Overquill? What is that?
Azul doesn't even know what Overquill is.
No. But I'll give you the rest of the lifelines here for anyone who's following along if they want to try and guess which Pokemon this is.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
it's
not
a
even
new.
called Hisuian Overquill. Oh, wait, the TCG card might be called Hisuian Overquill, but
Wait, is there a TCG card of this?
yeah,
You sure?
yeah, this guy,
I don't think there is.
dude. How much you want to bet?
Nothing, but I don't think there is.
There is.
I mean, go and pull it up. I've just never seen this Pokemon before, and if it's in a card form, I
I spelled
usually
it wrong.
yeah. Go ahead. Oh, there is. Oh, but it's not. Oh, I thought it was a new Pokemon.
It is
Yeah,
a new
this one.
Pokemon.
No, no, like Scarlet and Violet on Pokemon.
It is.
This is not
It's
from
from
Scarlet and
it's
Violet.
from Legends Arceus, the
Yeah,
evolution
but
of Hisuian Quillfish.
what set did this come out in though?
Astral Radiance.
Yeah, Scarlet and Violet on.
Oh,
Oh,
oh, sure, 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 sure,
yeah.
sure, sure, sure. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, the other
Lifelines.
lifelines. Darkness Ablaze is the set. Do you have anything off of that chip? You want to give it another try? And
Read me the
then
flavor text one more time.
when it gets angry, it inhales with all its might and its body gradually inflates. Sometimes it can grow 20 times larger.
I don't think so. Let me hear an attack name.
I'm gonna give you the probably
Eldegoss?
the easier of the two attack names. I'm gonna give you the easier one here. For everyone to follow along as well. Double Smash.
I
And
don't
it
know.
also kind of looks like it could. It's not doesn't look like a Kirby, but like it's not too far off as far as Pokemon go.
Ditto.
No, it's a stage 1.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Its basic looks even more like Kirby.
What? Kirby? I don't
It
know, bro.
is Wigglytuff.
Oh, what?
Jigglypuff.
Interesting.
Jigglypuff looks like Kirby, right? Yeah, close enough as far as Pokemon go.
Wigglytuff.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting one. I thought there was definitely a chance you'd get it, especially because of the double smash attack. I was like, this just feels like a Jigglypuff attack, like or
I was too
Jigglypuff attack,
tunneled for
Wigglytuff.
sure on
Fish.
the fish thing,
I mean, that's
yeah.
like a pretty good tunnel. I feel like though, like that makes sense. Um, and
Dude,
I don't
wow,
know.
PKMN cards is loading so slow today.
That's the one right there.
Yeah, I have already clicked
Oh,
on
you've
it.
already
It's
clicked it.
just it's just taking hence the comment of it is taking a long time.
I saw the image is not fully loaded. I thought you were waiting on more images.
But yeah, here it is eventually.
Eventually.
All right, well, I broke the streak, Azul.
Yeah. Well, I can keep my streak alive still at the very least. I got 2 weeks in a row.
I you
Might be able
know,
to get a third.
I have given you a little bit of a bone the last couple of
I don't
weeks.
think so. I think,
Okay, all right. Just wait for next week, buddy.
All right.
Just make sure
I'm
you
ready
remember
for it.
what the Pokemon Palpitoad is. Okay.
Palpitoad? Seismitoads stage 1?
Maybe. I can
Palpitoad.
go deep in the tank, bro.
all right. We'll see, we'll
Pokemon you've
see.
never even heard of.
So we are bringing back the City League Watch for this week because Japan does have a new set out. They've been playing around with it a little bit. There's not too much like crazy going on with archetypes, but there is some updates to some of the lists. So we could like breeze or take a look at a couple here real fast. I don't even know if the Tina list. We'll take a look at some of the winners here. The Tina list.
Let's start with this
mm,
Charizard. Well, not this Charizard. Let's start with Charizard because I think this shows the biggest update,
Yeah,
the biggest change, and that is the addition of Unfair Stamp really to the
yeah,
meta.
and that's card for anyone who doesn't know. You can only play it if one of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Both players shuffle their hand into their deck, and then you draw 5, they draw 2 as an item card, a spec.
It is your A spec, yes, but you can
But
combo it with Eerie,
you
delete
can
their
combo with
hand, leave them with not much. You
yeah,
can
combo
KO.
with knocking something out.
Yeah,
like
combo it with knocking something out. Yeah, knock out Beebrill, knock out Pidgeot, whatever.
I think this will be the go-to in Charizard for sure moving forward. And the question will just be like how many other decks um play it. Also, Chip, just so you know, you can just click on the deck on the right side. You don't have to click
Yeah,
on
I
the
know, I
actual.
know, I know.
Okay, I saw you do the extra click. I was just like, just
I
seeing
know.
what is this? What is this Lost Box Cram deck? Oh, it is just Lost Box Cram. Say bye. Another card we can mention that's being pretty popular, the Ursaluna.
I actually did look at this list earlier, and I think this deck looks sick.
Less sick when they have. Although, hold up. I was gonna say it's less sick.
Imagine playing Radiant Charizard, Sableye, Radzard Sableye with Greninja in your deck still as well. That's what this deck is, pretty
Oh,
much.
I didn't even realize that. You're right. You're not wrong. That
It's
is what this deck is.
Sablezard with Greninja.
Sableye with Greninja is pretty cool. And they got ways around Jirachi too. And Mist Energy, Temple of Sinnoh, canceling Colognes in Lost City.
So they are playing the new Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, which functions very similarly to Radiant Charizard. Its ability makes its attack cost less for each prize card your opponent has taken. Its attack costs 5 colorless energy and does 240 damage. And during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack.
Yeah. So literally just Radiant Charizard, the closer in the deck now. If you look at the Lost Tina list as well, they got the Blood Moon Ursaluna in there as well. It is everywhere. And
It's in
I mean,
the Arceus decks as well.
it
Oh,
makes
not this
sense.
Arceus deck.
Oh, we've been fooled. It makes sense though. The card is like just really good.
I
like
looked at
really,
this
really good.
earlier. Yeah, it's in this Lugia list here. This
Which
Lugia list has the
makes sense.
unfair stamp as well.
Sheesh.
But one of the more interesting cards, and something I think both Azul and I thought was going to be a lot better than what these results have been showing over in Japan,
I was hoping it'd be better.
is the Greninja, the new Terra type Stage 2 EX. Its attack for 1 water energy deals 170 damage, and then you get to search your deck for any card and put it into your hand. And its second attack for a water and 2 colorless, you discard 2 energy from this Pokemon, and it does 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon.
It works with double turbo. You
Yep,
go in and search out one card, you combo that with Pidgeot. So we're talking about like canceling clone combos, which we see
yep,
here. Um, yeah, I mean but where is it?
yep.
Not about that's kind of sad to see, to be honest, because it looks like such a powerful card. It feels like we have the tools in the format. The Irida seems to combo well with Pidgeot. Just see one here doing well, and I don't even know. Like if you click on some of the tournaments, are they really popping up at all in these top 16 placements?
They haven't been. Yeah, I looked like I
Mm,
said, I was looking at this a little bit earlier today. I did see a few iron leaves. Is that what it's called? Iron leaves? What no, iron thorns decks here and
that
there.
speaking of like when I was talking about like Quadlax is a kind of a toxic deck, like the Quad Iron Thorns deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that deck. Like, if this deck is actually good, that's just like super cringe. Like, this is just you're not playing
Technical
Pokemon.
machine turbo energized, just load the guy up right away.
I think the one if this deck does become good, I would like to see a rule implemented that if you misplay with this deck, you have to immediately concede the game. Because the chance that you misplay with
House
this deck is
rule.
like 0. Like, you're not playing Pokemon. This is like Quadlax. Like, you're not playing Pokemon. You're
What's
just like
this
sitting
machine?
there and locking their rule box abilities, and then you should shove their hand in the deck and put it on the bottom deck. If if either player put any cards on the bottom of the deck in this way, each player flips a coin. If heads, they draw 6. If tails, you draw 3. Like if this deck is playing this card, bro, you're not allowed to misplay. If you misplay once, you literally just have to concede the match.
Holy cow.
I'm memeing, of course, but yeah, these are the kind of decks. Like I said, Quadlax is in this category for sure. It's a very powerful deck. Last format, not as powerful this format, but these kind of decks you do not want to see being like tier 1 decks because it's just not. enjoyable experience, I think, all around.
No, this is a little different. I think you
Yeah, this
wouldn't
is like
hate this as
okay.
much. This is
Yeah.
just like a future box deck that is playing the it's basically like the future Iron Hands deck that we see currently, with the Iron Thorns EX thrown in there.
Yeah, like that kind of deck. Like I don't have anything against Iron Thorns, but like just like a quad Iron Thorns deck is like
Or
cringe.
this
There's no other
person
way to
forgot they
put
could
it.
play a Radiant Pokemon.
Yeah, it's not. Well, what would you play though?
Yeah, I guess nothing. They only play 4 basic Psychic
Yeah,
Energy. So this is like a turbo Sableye deck, right? It's 4
yeah.
Comfey,
Three
3
vacuum.
Sableye, and then they play 3 Lost Vacuum. They play 2/2 Banette, Puppet Offering to throw it into the Lost Zone.
I feel like you
They're
may
just
as
try they are
well.
definitely this is a deck that they are getting 10 in the Lost Zone turn 2, like, every time, and going
Yeah,
with Sableye. And then they're playing 3 copies of the new Lana's card. Lana's Assistance, put 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand, excluding Pokemon with a rule box.
yeah. It's definitely a interesting deck. I like the look of these kind of like this is something that's a little bit fresh, right? Also
Yeah.
got that technical the crisis punches involved, TM Devos. Yeah, something a little fresh here for sure. Definitely like to see stuff like this popping up. Definitely a fan.
So yeah, just a quick look at the upcoming format, and it'll be a little different for Twilight Masquerade, right? Because we will also have the addition of some other powerful cards they don't have yet. The
Yeah.
Ogerpon, the Dragapult EX is definitely the big one. That card seems super good for sure.
And they are actually
Um,
getting those cards on the 26th, literally 3 days. They get those cards in 3 days,
okay.
I believe. So we'll maybe do a City League watch next week as well because I'll have a
Yep.
weekend of City Leagues with those new cards. And hopefully we see some decent shift. They don't have the Diplin yet, do they? I think the Diplin, the more I've thought about Diplin,
Dude, you were
bro,
trashing the friggin' watch party or whatever the
okay, the more I've thought about Diplin though, Diplin goes hard. I'm actually super Diplin one hit KOs Charizard. And then I don't know. I think it just prize trades well into the rest of the format. I'm a big Diplin fan all of a sudden. Like I've thought about it a little bit more. You get that new special energy that makes it worth 0 prize cards. We are getting enhanced hammer, but you could get Silene involved or a Roseanne's backup to recover it. Because you can still get the effect from it once a game. Um, so yeah, I'm excited for the Diplin to be honest. I think there's something there for Diplin. Definitely a fan, Diplin fan.
he's dipping and diving, ducking and dodging. It's the Diplin. Here he is.
So if you got the Festival Plaza in play, you can attack twice for its ability, and then it does 20 damage for each of your bench Pokemon. So you're doing 200 damage total, which you're grass type, so you want to KO Charizard. Vitality Band, want to KO Chi and Pow. It's a basic Pokemon. Knock that out. They have to send something else up. You
Well,
knock that out. Like, yeah, I
I
don't
think
know.
you've done some bad math here, my friend.
I miss on.
20 for each of your benched Pokemon.
Okay.
Do you think this is doing 200 damage for one? Oh, like for each, like 100 for each attack.
Yeah, 100 for each
Okay, okay,
attack.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I thought you were thinking it was like just swinging for 200. I was like,
Well, if
brother,
it's a Charizard, we are swinging for 200 and
sure,
then maybe
sure,
200
sure.
again, but that's like just KOing one Charizard, so it doesn't really matter,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Do you
yeah,
get the
I'm a fan.
Thwacky as well, which is cool, right? You know, a little bit of a
Yeah.
search engine.
I mean, you're playing a 4/4 Thwacky, you're playing a 4/4 Diplin, like Tatsugiri in there to find our supporters. I
The
don't know.
grass guys.
This deck might be pretty good. Obviously, like something like Iron Hands seems like it could be a trouble, but even then, Iron Hands works off of the baton right now. So you go like vacuum Defiance Band, return KO the Iron Hands, plus you vacuum away their heavy thing. I don't know. Might be something there.
Could be. We'll see. It does seem like a lot of setup to get all those stage ones in play, but you do have that new ace spec. Could that this could be the deck for that new ace
Oh,
spec?
actually, no memes. It might be. We could also get TM Evo involved, but
Sure.
maybe it is time for that ace spec.
Yeah, search your deck for 3 evolution stage 1 evolution Pokemon, put them in your hand, right?
But it's hard to play that over the special energy that makes him take one less prize card throughout the game. That'd be a hard sell.
Depends on how I mean, I guess your Thwackies find each other, right? So,
Yeah, you could just do a Thwacky chain, right?
yeah.
Thwacky finds Thwacky, and the last one finds their piece for the turn.
Yeah. So then you're set up
I don't
moving
know.
forward. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Well, let's move
I'm
on
dipping, bro.
to
That's all I'm saying.
our last discussion here, last point, and that was um this tweet put out by Christopher Szymanski. For those who don't know, Christopher was a longtime Pokemon TCG player. He and his family are, very involved in the community. Of course, many of you know Alex Szymanski. He won EOIC last year. He's been a consistent top North American player. Diane, their mom, the one who's known as the best Shemansky, world's competitor last year, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, Christopher does a lot of the hive stuff at Pokemon tournaments. So that means like running the actual tournament itself, tournament operations, those type of things. And he tweeted out, curious about players' thoughts on a general trend, no specific case here, and lays out this example. We're in round 6 or 7 of a regional. Deck check discovers a player's list doesn't match the deck by a card or two. What strikes you as the appropriate penalization? What factors move it up or down?
Yeah, so this one's interesting, and I think the most recent. I mean, this is not the most recent time it's happened. The most recent one I can think about that's happened in like a high level scenario would be Tord with the lost pile when he got top 16 or top 8 and was on stream and they discovered he didn't have a nest ball or did have a nest ball or didn't have an ultra ball. And I forget. I think they just gave him a game loss in that match, and this was on winning in day two. Um, so the first question to ask, I think, should the penalty first change based on when it is discovered? So if we find it, if it
Yeah.
gets found in day one or on the winning in or going into deck check of top 8, should there be a different outcome for the penalty?
I feel like
Um,
right now it is weighted based on when it is discovered, but
because I feel like in
also
day one, I've heard of many times, I don't think it, and yeah, I've heard many times in like day one where like round one, someone finds out they messed up their deck list, or the round one deck check
and
happens and they catch something, and it's like they give you like a game loss maybe, or just like a warning, and then move on from
also
there.
this is like totally something that I would say like 99.9% of the times this happens, it is an honest mistake, right?
Yes, yeah,
Like this is definitely something that just can happen, um a lot of like the top players do things to try to ensure that it doesn't happen. Like anytime I've submitted a deck list, I always like literally go in when I have my deck in order. I look at the card, type it in, put it face down, do the same thing, double check, and then submit, right? To
yeah,
make sure nothing happens. But sometimes people are, changing cards at the last second. They're a little less organized with how they're doing things, and a card doesn't get cut at the last second that they meant to cut. They just forget to swap one thing out, whatever it is. Like most of the time this happens, it is accidental. And the current tournament rules do say that if some issue like this is discovered, or the penalty guidelines, I should say, is that you have to match the deck back to the deck list.
yeah.
So
Deck
at a
list has to be
minimum, what
matched.
they'll do is they will, regardless of what penalty is assessed, and a lot of people in the comments here were talking about disqualifications for this penalty, which we'll talk about in a moment. But assuming the player is able to continue on in the tournament, they uh, have to match their deck to what their deck list submission was. So they
Yeah,
may have to cut the card that they intended to swap, whatever it is, right?
yeah. The other factor to kind of think alongside that is like when it is found, which I guess has to go with like the potential advantage you could have gained, right? If you play with the wrong list, if you play with the incorrect list for 15 rounds as opposed to 1 round, you're more likely to have gained a better advantage. And we're assuming that the list they're playing with is what they think is better, right? As opposed to the list they submitted, right? I think that'd also be a pretty good assumption. Um, the list that they submitted was probably like they submitted, the night before the tournament, and then they changed a card and they forgot to update the list online. Is usually what happens. So they think the player thinks that the list they're playing with is the better list, but you should be forced to play with what you submitted, which I think is definitely the correct
Yeah.
resolve if the player gets to continue playing the tournament. Um, the other thing that I saw I think the back and forth I saw was with Robin Schultz and Christopher, or maybe it was just like Robin making a statement on one of these threads. Was just like, and you can go ahead and read Robin's post there actually, and just go with off of that.
Yeah, Robin said anything from a game loss to a DQ. If a Chien Pao player forgot to put their Greninja on the deck list, I think a game loss is sufficient. However, if they have an unlisted Manaphy in their deck during a mirror match, that would have to be a DQ.
So Robin is saying that he thinks there should be leeway, or not leeway, but variations of punishment based on how impactful the card is for the deck, maybe based on the potential meta of day two or something like that, or just the
Yeah,
matchup you're playing up against. Because like a
yeah,
Manaphy, right now, no Chien Pao players play Manaphy. But all of a sudden, if you run into a Chien Pao player that's playing a Manaphy and Manaphy's not on their deck list, that looks a lot more sus than a Chien Pao player who forgot to put Greninja on their deck list or
Obviously
wasn't
a
playing
card they
with a
would want to
Greninja.
have.
Yeah, if they weren't playing with a Greninja, that's a little bit different, right? Because yeah, Greninja you want all the time in every matchup where it's like Manaphy, not that good of a card in Chien Pao to be honest right now, unless you're in the mirror match, then it's really good. But if it's not on your deck list and you're playing with a Manaphy, then it becomes a little bit weird. So yeah, that's like another question to answer. One thing as well that I actually had a discussion with someone recently. I forget who it was, but we were talking about penalties and stuff, and like how strict should rulings be, and what should stuff look like. And a good point that they brought up to me that I hadn't overly thought about is if rulings become predictable, then people could theoretically always cheat in a tournament as long as the ruling didn't lead to a disqualification, right? Like if you are found with a card that is not on your deck list, if it's always a game loss, and then you have to switch back to your deck list, you could just cheat for 15 rounds, go into top eight, you get deck checked, and then you get a game loss going into top eight, but you made it to top eight. And you knew that if you ever get caught at any point before you go into top eight for deck check, it'll only be a game loss, and you're just playing with the 60 cards that you submitted, right? So that was interesting. If penalties do become super predictable, then you could theoretically abuse it. So either penalties have to be super harsh and there's no leeway for anything, and it's always a DQ, or you have to leave it up to the discretion of judges. And if the judges think you are being malicious, that's when penalties become harsher. And I like that one a
And
little bit
it
more.
also I think another important thing as well is that it's not just, if the judges are thinking you are malicious, it is if they believe a significant advantage could have been gained, right?
Well, I think if they ever think you're malicious, they think you're cheating. And if you're cheating, you
Yes.
should be DQ'd.
Yes, but also if a significant advantage is gained from the
Oh,
error,
without,
yes,
yeah,
without the
without,
intent to
yeah,
cheat.
yeah, yeah. Then you should
If
also be put, there should also be some kind of
Yes, you
punishment
should
for it.
it
Yeah.
would also be a harsher penalty, even if you weren't intending to cheat. So, like,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
example here, like, obviously, a Chien Pao player who is not playing Radiant Greninja in their deck, doesn't have it on their deck list, that is a mistake, right? They meant
Yeah.
to be playing Radiant Greninja. So, I think it is fair to look at that and say, "This is a mistake. You are gonna have to remove your Radiant Greninja, but you will be allowed to continue to compete in the tournament," right?
So that's why I like the idea of some amount of nuance or, case by case basis kind of situations for rulings because I don't know. I don't look at Pokemon as being that serious of a competition simply because the barrier to entry is paying for your registration and showing up to the tournament. We're not, I like this is like the comparison I bring up all the time. We're not the MLB of Pokemon. It's not just the best players playing against each other. We are T-ball to MLB level players that show up for tournaments. And I think it wants to be a more open environment for the less experienced players. And maybe that if that means that you judge people based on their play point count, maybe that's could be a solution, right? If you reach certain play point thresholds, then at that point the penalties get harsher. Like I don't know, but like if that has to be the way it is, I think that'd be fine because I think it feels really bad for someone showing up to their first event and getting DQ'd because they messed up their deck list round one, right?
One of my, favorite examples of this error, like I said, this, like, is something that happens pretty regularly.
And
I
also,
don't know if you remember this, Azul, but it was
okay,
at, a Virginia regionals several years ago. It was like 2018. I just pulled the tournament up. Eric Smith played through the first 5 rounds of the tournament and went 5-0 with Septile GX,
remember
which
this? Yeah,
is not a very common deck. It was pretty crazy that he did that.
yeah,
And then they checked his deck, and he had submitted a Blacephalon deck on accident, a
yeah, yeah.
totally different archetype. It would be like if someone was
60
playing a
cards.
Charizard deck, and then the judges took back their deck and pulled up their deck list, and they submitted Chien Pao.
Yeah,
Basically, he decided last second in the morning to change decks, went with the spicy pick of the Sceptile as opposed to the safe pick of Blacephalon that he had submitted the night before, and just didn't quite get his deck list submitted in time. Thought he did. I don't know exactly what the situation was. Thought he
the
submitted it,
process.
didn't. Basically, he was just playing with a deck that he thought he submitted, but he didn't.
Yeah.
If that happens today, and I think if that did happen today, that player probably would more than likely just be disqualified, especially when they get to 5-0 in the tournament, right? Because
Yeah. I mean, I don't know though. I mean, yeah, it depends on what I guess 5-0 maybe that would have to be a disqual. I don't know though, because it's like it is it's so obviously a mistake. And I don't know, maybe in that situation as well. So basically the process of submitting a deck list on RK9 is you create a deck and then you have to click on the tournament you want to submit the deck list for out of the tournaments you're currently available to submit a deck list for. So I'm pretty sure that this has never happened to me before, but I'm pretty sure the step that the players forget to do is they go into the deck list creator, go through the whole process of picking the cards on their phone, usually make their deck list, click create deck, and then from there they forget to click on the tournament and click submit deck. Because like the whole process of making deck feels like the work, and then you're like, okay, I did it. I made my deck list. I'm going to
Mhm.
bed. Then they forget to click the tournament, click submit deck. I'm pretty sure that's like the step that everyone misses. But like, if you have the secondary deck there from Eric built, just not submitted, you should still force Eric to play with the deck that he did submit, which they did.
Yeah.
But it's so obvious a mistake. Like, and of course, there's going to be someone who in the comment section, or this is what people say on Twitter, is like, but how do you know for sure it's a mistake? What if he's actually intentionally cheating and wanted to play with Sceptile for the first 5 rounds, even though he submitted Cephalon, so at some point he could switch back to like, sure, we could go that route and just assume everyone's malicious and serve the worst of everyone. Um, but once again, I think this what I think about more towards is newer players, and it's like they're more likely to have these deckless errors, right? Because they haven't done this process before. Do we really want to DQ them if they're 2 and
Yeah,
0
I mean,
with the
and
wrong
if it
submitted deck?
happens,
If it's
like,
if it's
say
like pretty obviously a mistake, like, and you could always go to the point, well, they could be cheated. Like, yeah, sure. But I think we add a little bit of nuance to it. I think it should kind of maybe be judged on just if the judge, take it to someone who has experience with doing more of these rulings, who can more easily add some
yeah.
nuance to this, the higher level judge, and like
I
let them
do
make a
think that
call.
has to be a big part of it, right? I think, like, and I don't think any disqualification from a tournament is ever happening without multiple people discussing it first, right? Like, uh, there's definitely levels to all of these things.
Yeah.
Um, So, I think that is an important part, right? Is like the people making the decision ultimately made to be incredibly informed on why the decision is being made, like what the impactful card missing was, right? Or the fact that Manaphy is a card that is not really played in Chien-Pao right now, and this player has it. It's not like the craziest card to see in the deck, but like look at the matchup they're playing. Why would it
Yeah.
potentially be in there, right?
You could even go like a step further into investigation. Ask an opponent from last round, did they have Manaphy when you
Yeah,
played
sure.
against them? Did you see Manaphy? And then when they say no, I think you could add that information to your decision making, right? I don't think any like I think that stuff is like fine to add to decision making. Like I said, I had that one discussion with someone recently, I forget who it was, where it's like they feel like you need to remove the nuance from it and everything just needs to be written in the rule book. And when this happens, this is the penalty every single time with harsher penalties overall. So there's no room for people to be like, oh, well, I'm only going to get a warning here if this happens, therefore I'm going to abuse this until I get a warning, and then I'll stop doing it. Which
Yeah.
which I do see
I
that
think
being like something
we
that some
had
players could take advantage of.
if we had something like a pro tour, I would be in favor of that,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was just like the top 100 players in the world showing up to play in some of these events, let's be harsher. I'm all for that. But like I said, it's T-ball to MLB. It's not just the best players in the world. It's not just the MLB of Pokemon players showing up to these tournaments. And I think we do need to cater pretty heavily to the T-ball players because like they're the ones that grow the game and make the game a reality to the scale it currently is at is the T-ball players, right? So we need to cater to the T-ball players, and we want them to show up and want to play again. We want to make it a fun and enjoyable experience for them. Um, yeah, not get DQ'd for by submitting like one card different on their deck list when it's fairly obvious that it was probably just a mistake. Let's chalk it up as a mistake, maybe a game loss, whatever. Make them understand what happened, how they can do better in the future. But that's where I'm currently at with it all. But I'm not like against going the harsher route as well. And I definitely, it's one of those things where like when having these discussions and think about this stuff, I think I could easily be convinced one way or the other personally, like where I'm currently at in my thought process on it. And I think it's good discussion that went on in this specific Twitter thread from Christopher.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely, you just like to see good discussion happening, and a lot of good
Yeah.
players, like, coming in on their thoughts on the situation, right? Um, and kinda playing both sides of the coins, but yeah, we just wanted to throw our general thoughts out there about it. Yeah, I always enjoy kinda hearing where these judging discussions end up, but yeah, I think that's all we have for the episode this week. We really appreciate everyone sticking with us and listening. Thanks for your support as
I will say
always.
one
Yeah.
last thing I think we would want to see more of is just and to get there, there will be a lack of consistency because, like, a way a ruling was ruled maybe at this next major tournament, if all of a sudden they start seeing some consistency on the tournament after that and start ruling it a different way, that would be a lack of consistency. But in a longer stretch, into the future, just more consistency overall, I think is what generally most people want, right? It's like when this thing happened at the last event, we want it to be ruled the same ideally in the next event, right? When it's almost like the exact same scenario for whatever that scenario is. Consistency across the board is great. To get to some initial consistency, there will be some lack of consistency initially because like everyone has to start doing everything one way at a certain period. But I think at the very least, no matter how they start ruling stuff one way or another in the future, I think everyone is would be behind that for sure. We'd all love to see that. Final note.
There we go. Final note from Azul GG, new segment on the podcast.
Final thoughts. I have a lot of final thoughts. That's one for now.
If you want to hear any more final thoughts, be sure to check out our bonus episode over on the Patreon,
Final.
patreon.com/uncommon energy podcast. That's where we're headed right as soon as we're done with this outro. Yeah, we appreciate your support as always. If you do enjoy the podcast, be sure to leave us a like, a review, a rating, a comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of those things help us out a bunch. They'll help more people discover the podcast and help us to keep doing what we are doing. And if you want to stay up to date with us, the best place to do it is over on Twitter. You can follow myself at Chip Ritchie, Azul at Azul_GG. You can also follow the podcast at Uncommon_Energy.
Yeah, appreciate the support as always. Make sure you come out, check out the show match this Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern. The best, I would say by far the best group in Latin America from Brazil, playing up against some of the best in America. Be sure to come check that out. And then catch you all next Wednesday, 7 a.m. Eastern.